Hey everyone, sorry about the delay. We had a small technical issue. I do apologize. Today, of all days that I should have this. Okay, let's see. Yes, I am live in my channel. I've just gone live. And everyone, let's see. Have we gone live on Adam? Yes, we have gone live on Adam Seeker's channel. Hey, welcome. Adam Seeker, thank you very much for joining up with me today. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. This is your favorite Murtad. I have to start like that.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right, guys. I'm sorry for the delay. I am so sorry for the delay, guys. As you can see, this is dual live stream. We are live in two different channels at the same time, and I don't know whether I will call Lloyd my guest or should I call myself your guest. But same thing. We are together.
yeah.
One body. One body.
Yeah, guys. Yeah, so there was a small technical glitch on my side. I had to fix that very quickly. So, yeah, if there's any technical issues, those the fault is entirely mine, and I do apologize. But yeah, let's go ahead. So, Adam, can you just tell the audience about today? Well, the audience knows you very well. I think you're very well known in this community. And can you tell the audience what it is that we're discussing today and why you think it's important?
Yes. So, guys, one of the very important point is that Lloyd is a very comprehensive, knowledgeable person when it comes to Sharia. Quite frankly, even though that I have been Muslim for a very long time, uh, still my knowledge on Sharia when he speaks is like a baby knowledge. Seriously speaking. Uh, so when Lloyd and I got in touch, I was like, we have to do this stream because our audience who knows a lot about Quran and Hadith and the Sunnah of Muhammad does not know what Sharia is. And hence we have to go deep into Sharia because without Sharia, the Islam is incomplete. This is very important to understand. This is a very basic point. Without Sharia, Islam is incomplete. As you have heard from many scholars of Islam already, that Islam is not only a religion, but it gives you how to live your life and how to govern. And this is the reality. This is a reality that because Muhammad was not a prophet, as we know that, he was a false prophet. He used the divine inspiration kind of a thing to fulfill his kingship, to fulfill himself becoming a king and a landlord. Because of that, Sharia is necessary, and that's simply Islamic law. A lot of people actually says Sharia law, Sharia law. Remember, when you say Sharia with law, that's that's I don't know. Give me the English word, Lloyd, because you have to only say Sharia.
Look, granted, Sharia means the way. The fiqh is technically the application, but Sharia is law. However, in the colloquial parlance, even when Muslim scholars speak, they refer to the Sharia as law, or they might even call it Sharia law. I don't. I think it's a minor. I think it's really a minor issue, and it's not something that we need to be
Focus on.
stressed. Oh, yeah, I don't think it's something really. We all know what it is. I mean, I will get into some of the details, and actually, let me go back to, yeah, I do apologize. With the in the rush to set up after this little error, I think the video on your channel, the quality is a little bit low, and I must apologize for that in advance. I've managed to fix mine, but yours, the output is not looking the way it should. We should be streaming at full HD, and even though it says so, there seems to be some kind of interference. So I do apologize in advance to everyone. Um, so yeah. Okay, guys. Well, tell you what. We are. Let me go back here. So actually, I just want to change my screen. Can everyone see what I have here? You mentioned that Islam is not just a religion. Okay,
Hmm.
that this document that I have here, the most famous of the Islamic dictionaries is called the Lisan al-Arab, the Arab tongue, and it was completed by a man called Ibn Manzur in 1290. It has 20 printed volumes, and it's the best known Arab dictionary, right? It's the best known Arab language dictionary. Let me actually give people the meaning of the word deen, because today we're going to be talking about definitions of words in Islam, because Islam is a legalistic religion. It's a legal religion. So everything has legal definitions. For instance, Muslims will tell you jihad means to struggle. And yes, it does in the colloquial dictionary meaning. However, the Shari meaning, the legal meaning, the meaning that the scholars take it in, it means to make war upon Jews, Christians, and other non Muslims to impose Islam. So let's have a look at the word deen. We hear this a lot. Islam is a deen. So now the Lisan al-Arab suggests four meanings of the term deen. The first meaning is subjugation or dominance. That is the first meaning of the term deen. I'm just going to move my camera to the top right. So the first meaning is subjugation or dominance. Administrative or legislative authority, to put pressure on others to be obedient, or using power to enslave or to make one obedient. In Arabic, the term "dintuhum fadanu" means I subjugated them so they obeyed me. So it means also I ruled or governed upon him. In other words, Islam is not a religion. Let's go. The second meaning is obedience, bondage, subordination, domination by someone, and bearing humiliation under subjugation and power of others. I'll stop there for a moment. Do you have a comment for me on this?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, you are absolutely right, because even if we look into Quran chapter number 49, verse number 14, if you can show on your screen, that would be brilliant as well. It
Quran chapter
says,
9,
chapter
9:14.
49,
Oh,
49, 14, 49, 14.
can do. Oh, sorry, my bad. I just mistyped, but I'll get it up in just a second. Oh, great. My typing is, I spell extremely well, but I type really badly.
That is all fine, brother. You are already doing a great job hosting these streams in two different platforms at the same time.
Okay, here we go. 49:14. This is it.
Yeah, zoom in pretty big,
Fine.
make it as big as you can. More big, more big, more big, so that people can read even more. If you can, please zoom in, zoom in. I
I'm
just need
zooming in.
first translation. Yep, yep. All right, so we can see from Sahih International, it's an easy translation to read. The Badwan says, we have believed. So Islam, they believed in what? Islam. Say, O Muhammad, say to them, you have not believed, but say, we have submitted. So unless you submit to who? To Allah and His Messenger. To Allah and His Messenger. Unless you submit to Allah and His Messenger, believing is not sufficient. So as a Christian, you have to believe in Lord Jesus Christ, His coming, His dying on the cross, and Him dying for our sins and our transgressions. And He rose up from the dead on the third day. That's our belief. But if you just believe, it's not sufficient. You have to fully submit. And that is what Lloyd was showing you from other books and other references, which are very important.
Yeah.
Because when somebody actually just say, hey, say the Shahada, you are a Muslim. No, that's a starting point. That's not
Yes.
you a Muslim. Please, brother.
So the meaning continues. So the second meaning, as I said, obedience, bondage, and bearing humiliation under subjugation and power of others. These others are the Muslims. As stated, dintuhum fadanu means I subjugated them, so they obeyed me. The obedient tribe is called blah blah blah. But here, al-din does not mean religion. In purple, it says here, al-din does not mean religion. It means obedience. And the third meaning is rules, regulations, ideology, doctrine, custom, tradition, and finally, religion.
Exactly. Brother, the screen on my channel, can you
Is
fix a little bit on live, because it's really hard to read for a lot
I
of
fully understand and I apologize. Yeah, let me see if I can do something on that side. I have no idea what happened there. Because I am outputting at, so, because I'm outputting at, uh, I'm definitely outputting at a high level, but let me see what we have here. Yeah, because I set it up correctly, but I'm really not sure what it is. It's never happened to me before.
Okay, let me
Let
help
me.
our audience. Where is your stream link? Okay, guys, because Lloyd is, I do not want everyone to be delayed over
I'll
here.
drop my
So
stream link in
this
your
is,
channel, and I
this
do
is,
apologize. This
yes,
is the
this
stream
is
right now.
Lloyd's channel stream key. So you can join here and it will be better over here. Somehow there is some technical problem which is causing the stream to be bad on my channel. I will upload this later with a better stream.
Yeah,
But for now, you guys can jump into Lloyd's channel, support this brother as well, subscribe to his channel as well. This is the stream key for better stream output. Please join this, and let me pin this message on the top as well for the people. Sorry for this inconvenience,
yeah,
uh, but
yeah,
you
everyone.
can click on this link and jump to Lloyd's stream.
It's getting worse. I really do apologize, everyone. My sincere apologies to you as well. I'm not sure why this is occurring. It should not have done so. Um, yeah, because I've done this before and not had this, so I do apologize. Okay, guys. So today we're going to be talking about the Sharia, right? And we'll be taking questions. And so, what few people know is that Sharia is highly detailed. It is a lengthy series of detailed books of law, right? And it is quite literally plagiarized from the Jewish Talmud. So the Sharia is effectively the Jewish Talmud. So if anyone has any questions, do drop those in the comments and we'll try and get back to you. Okay, so yeah, so I do apologize to all of those. Okay, so everyone, the major sources that I am utilizing for this are I'm using a book called Islamic and Talmudic Jurisprudence, the Four Roots of Islamic Law and their Talmudic Counterparts, from Judith Romney Wegner, and Washafi, the Master Architect of Islamic Jurisprudence, from Wa'al Bihalak. He's a very well known Islamic apologist and scholar. And of course, I'm using two of the most famous and the most popular Islamic law manuals, one called the Umdat al-Salik, or Reliance of the Traveler. This is the most popular Islamic law manual in the world. The other one is the Hedaya. It is 2,000, nearly 2,700 pages, a highly detailed manual of Islamic law. It's probably the biggest of them. And when scholars in Islamic law pass their exams after their 5 or 7 years, the Hedaya is the last manual that they learn. Okay, so let's continue. Now, a small caveat. So this is from Judith Romney Wegner, and she tells us that severe limitations are imposed by the scarcity of early Islamic legal material. So again, just like for the codexes of the Quran, we have a lack of actual available material, and there's a complete lack of pre-Islamic Arabian legal texts. So research is hampered by the probability that doctrinal considerations led to the deletion of any references to foreign sources from early legal texts. In other words, Islam borrowed and then deleted any reference to the fact that they did borrow. That's why you have all these Arabization of many of these terms. The evidence may therefore remain at best no more than circumstantial, even if proven beyond sufficient, well, even if you should prove sufficient to satisfy a jury beyond a reasonable doubt. So just make a note, a lot of data was deliberately deleted and distorted. Okay, now I want to give an example of what the Islamic law says. Now, understand that Islamic law, if we have a caliphate, what you will have is these laws will become the law that you live under, right? In Pakistan, they still utilize Islamic law. And in fact, this is written by two Islamic law professors. Now, please see in the description box for a link to all of the documents that I'm referencing here today. Okay. So, Pakistani law refers to four major Islamic law manuals or Sharia law manuals, and these are listed here: the Hedaya, the Digest of Muhammadan Law, and Muhammadan Law by Said Amir Ali, and Principles of Muhammadan Law by D.F. Mullah. And on the basis of exploratory analysis of the reported cases, the following books are found to be relied upon more frequently by the courts to derive what is an authentic point of Islamic law on a particular issue. Okay, we're having a problem with the connection to Adam. Adam, are you there? Yeah, I'm experiencing a poor network connection to Adam. So, Adam, are you
Yeah, I'm
back?
back.
Okay,
Yes, I am
great.
back.
I really do apologize why the gremlins are attacking us today. Okay, so let's have a look here. So this document is called Genealogical Analysis of Islamic Law Books relied on in the courts of Pakistan by two Islamic law professors. The second one that they refer to, the Digest of Muhammadan Law, this is a copy taken out of that book, and let's look at the kind of law that Islam teaches. So let's have a look. For instance, this is on a section on marriage, right? And it talks about someone who's already married to a slave and so on. Don't forget, Islamic law is permanent. It is the law for all time within Islam. So, fourth, when a man has had sexual intercourse with a girl under the age of 9 years and has ruptured the parts, when they say has ruptured the parts, this means her vajayjay, it is unlawful for him to have further connection with her, but she is not released from her ties of marriage if connected with him by marriage or slavery. If no rupture has taken place, the prohibition is not incurred. In other words, he can continue to diddle the girl who is under the age of 9 years, according to the most valid opinion. Ruptured the parts, yes, a very beautiful way of saying that. That you've destroyed her. Yeah. So understand, this is not an unusual thing to find within Islamic law. Within the Hedaya, within the Reliance, you will find numerous references to sex with children. And I mean, when I say children, I mean infants. In fact, there's even a reference to a man accusing his infant wife of adultery with other men, right? And the law states that a man should not accuse an infant wife of adultery because she could not have initiated the act of adultery. Any comments from you, Adam, before I continue?
Brother, I have done multiple live streams on this, um, and I've shown multiple papers and research papers on that. Let me share one of my video over here where I have shared this information in very detail. You have to make me mod of your channel so that I could
Of
share
course.
this. So this is, guys, on my channel. I'm sending it. Um, Islamic moralities, and on your channel, I'm doing that as well.
Just
Islamic
type a random
morality.
comment and I will add you right now. Again, guys, I do apologize. I have no idea why the connection to Adam Seeker's channel is so bad. It should not be doing that. But and here
Yeah,
you
it's
go.
all because of you, brother. You are so bad right now.
Oh man, it's embarrassing for me. So, okay, yeah, it's really embarrassing for me. It should not be doing that. Um, okay, so you are now mod, so you're welcome to go ahead.
Okay, there we go. So let me. So can I show my screen somehow?
Yes, if you want to share your screen, let me just enable that for you. So,
Okay, okay. Let
go
me.
ahead. I mean, you should be
All
able
right,
to.
I should be able to. There we go, brother. So this is my screen. I hope
Wait,
you
give
guys
me
can
one
see.
second. I'm just going to grab. There it is. Your screen's coming through.
All
Excellent.
right. So this is Bahishti Zever by. Let me show you. Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanvi. He is considered one of the greatest scholar of the Middle Eastern region, the Southeastern region, Pakistan, India, Singapore, Sri Lankan, like, and I've shared the detailed link with you guys already, which described all these things in essence. This is page number 83 of the PDF and page number 74. If we look into this, this is tafsir of Quran, and this is nothing more than that. It says if a woman is underage, but not so small that if one has intercourse with her, I'm reading the point number one, if you can see my mouse, intercourse with her, there is a fear of the vaginal tissues tearing to such an extent that the vagina and the anus will virtually come together, means it will become one big hole. Then, by the insertion of the glands of the penis into her vagina, ghusl means bathing, bath, that the bath, the water bath, will become farad. So that will become compulsory on the man if he has reached the age of puberty. However, if there is an affirmational fear in a very minor girl, then mere insertion of the penis does not render ghusl obligatory. So if you do it in a very minor girl, dude, seriously, I don't think
Well,
I have to say anything more.
that's terrible. Yeah, we
If if a person whose testicle has been cut off insert his penis into the back part of anyone, means the anus of anyone or the vagina of a woman, ghusl will be farad on both of them if both are mature. If we go down to the next page, this is how they describe these things, because these are okay to do. These are not something un-okay. It's okay to do. Part number two, those conditions when ghusl is not farad. Part number two of it. If a man has intercourse with any underaged woman, means girl, baby, ghusl will not be farad on the condition that the semen does not come out and that the woman is so young that one fears that by having intercourse with her, her private part will become connected, means it will become one big hole. It will become one big hole. If a
horrific.
person wraps his penis with a cloth and has intercourse, because back in those days you do not have condoms, so now you can use condom, then ghusl will not become farad on a condition that the cloth is so thick that he does not feel the heat of the body, nor does he gets any enjoyment from the
Okay, yeah, yeah.
intercourse.
Maybe we can stop there. I think we get the point.
You get the
Uh,
point? Okay, let me you can
yeah.
disconnect my so
Okay,
this is
no.
this is written, this is actually uh, Bahishti Zever. You
Yeah,
can find this book in Britain
yeah. The
from
link.
any Muslim shop. Any Muslim shop.
Yeah, I do need to note though that the one that we're looking at is actually in use in the courts system of Pakistan. So the what I'm showing you here is law within the, for, as an example, the
You
Pakistani
can,
court system. It is not simply a random textbook. Judges consult this book that contains laws like this for their rulings. So yeah. So
and
I'll
they take it
continue.
from these books basically. That's what I'm
Yes, they
showing,
do.
that they take it from these books which are written.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So guys, I'll continue then. So Islamic law deals with two broad aspects of regulations. You have the purpose of the law, and then you have the sources of the law, right? So Islamic law deals with two broad aspects of regulation. So there's laws dealing with man's duty to Allah, which is known as ibadat. Okay, so you've got the five pillars of Islam, right? Faith, prayer, fasting, and so on. And generally, this is dealt with first in the fiqh books, which I'll explain soon. And there are laws governing human relations called mu'amalat, such as marriage, divorce, and succession. We've just looked at a couple of laws relating to marriage, right? Now, the sources fall into two main categories for discovering the law. You have initial sources, your Quran and Sunnah. And when I say Sunnah, I mean the Hadith as well as the Sirah, which are the biographies of Muhammad. And of course, you then have the what should be in theory secondary or dependent sources, which is the Ijma, the consensus of Islam, as well as Ijtihad or human reasoning. So let's continue. Now, we need to talk about the influence of Imam Shafi on Islam. Al Shafi said it must be remembered that the Quran texts are couched in very general terms, which it is the function of the Sunnah to expand and elucidate to make Allah's meaning absolutely clear. So this is quoted in John Burton, The Sources of Islamic Law. So Shafi himself said that the Quran is very general and that the Quran doesn't always make things clear. So therefore you need these other sources. So Islam doesn't function without those sources. But let's continue. So what the fiqh? Let's look at some basic definitions here. So Sharia, this is the law of Allah and the law of Muhammad. So we're looking at law, but also the values and the timeless moral principles derived from Quran and Sunnah, also known as the way. Now, the Sharia contains the moral, legal, military, social, commercial, and religious teachings of Islam, which Allah has legislated within the Quran and within the Sunnah. Understand, Christianity is a personal relationship between you and God, whereas this is a legal, military, social, commercial system, right? It's a complete code for civilization. So Coco Jasmine says Lloyd will never get anyone to debate on Sharia law because no one wants to talk about yes, correct. So now in summary, divine law Sharia is divine law derived from Quran and Sunnah, but then we have the fiqh. This is legal doctrine. Literally, it means the understanding. And this legislates the applied, tangible practices. It is the applied Sharia, right? So this is how to do things like religious obligation, commercial transactions, and how to prosecute crime. So it is the practical implementation of the Sharia. Understand? And the science of determining the precise terms of the Sharia. So the fiqh is, again, another one of those quote unquote sciences which tells you how to implement the Sharia, what it means. It's how it's interpreted. And also, the collective sources of jurisprudence are known as the usul al-fiqh. So all the sources that allow you to create the fiqh. And Sharia is considered, note, divine and immutable. It cannot be changed. It stands forever. So these rules, if there is ever a caliphate, and ISIS applied these rules to the letter. So ISIS was not deviant. ISIS was purely accurately applying the rules we will find in the books of fiqh that I've mentioned. So fiqh, finally, is the human effort to know and apply the Sharia, and fiqh is considered imperfect and changeable, so it is adaptable to changing circumstances. Now, when they say imperfect, it just means that circumstances change and this can be adapted to suit new conditions. Any comments from you, Adam?
Yes, guys, comprehend this. This is very important. Brother, go back, please. Go
Sure.
back. This is very important. This is meat. You know, when people come to you and they say, we don't agree with Sharia, we don't agree with Sharia, we don't agree with this is not divine, this is not word of Allah. Please rewind this, listen to what Lloyd just said. He just said it in the tone which I do not understand because the emphasis is not there. But you need to comprehend this part. Sharia is considered divine and unchangeable. It is considered divine and unchangeable because it is interpretation from the Quran and the authoritative Sunnah which all Muslims has to agree upon. So there is more to come which we'll talk about the consensus, the agreement. But before that, understand the very basic fact. If you are a Muslim, if you are a Muslim leader, you cannot run away from Sharia. It's not possible. This is basic. This is has to be there. Fiqh is the legal doctrine which can have some modification. Sharia cannot. Please understand that part. Lloyd, please.
Yeah. Also, notice this though, that the Quran and the Sunnah, there are various abrogations. The Quran is abrogated, the Hadith are abrogated. We'll get into that. However, the Sharia, which is the final understanding of what is in the Quran and the Sunnah by the scholars who've taken this, distilled it, and created what they say is the Sharia and what is the fiqh, that can never be abrogated. So while the Quran has been abrogated, while the Hadith have been abrogated, and in fact Hadith abrogate the Quran, what the scholars have written can never be abrogated. It is final. So their understanding is final. And but I'll continue from there. And of course, Conan Moga Ishere, or whatever his name is, has come on, and I've invited him multiple times to meet with me on live online to discuss the fiqh. Well, I've given him the links to the books. I've said read them, come online, let's talk about them, let's read the rulings. And he claims that the Sharia doesn't exist. He claims that it's just denial at this point because obviously he's not able to meet me to discuss. Now, notice there's no distinction made between the rules of Sharia law and the rules of Islam. They are the same. They are one and the same. Now, doctrine is a principle or a position or the body of principles in a branch of knowledge. So now, mostly we focus on like a verse, like, oh my God, 9:5. Well, the issue is that, for instance, if you read through the Hedaya, okay, if you take 9:5, what that means, you'll find like 50 or 60 pages of detailed description of exactly how to apply 9:5. Now, 9:5 might be a verse that's 20 words long, but you will find 50 to 100 paragraphs, 60 pages worth of very detailed rules, regulations, and law and examples of how to do this precisely. So we do not speak enough about doctrine in Islam, the rulings derived and the situation derived over 800 years on how to apply those verses. And this is much more important than a verse on its own. So, any your thoughts on that before I move on, Adam?
That is absolutely correct. As you can see, basically in tafsirs as well, you will find multiple tafsir. You will find multiple tafsir. So
Right,
when these scholars, the four school of thoughts, which is described in the next, let's go to the next one. Let's describe the four school of
right.
thought then before we go into this.
Right. Okay. So now, guys, I want to talk briefly then. What I will do is I will mention what I call the Mujtahid Mutlaq. Now, understand the scholars have inherited, so now especially the scholars of the four schools have inherited the mantle of authority from Muhammad. Because it is incumbent upon Muslims to follow the scholars, they need to consult. You know, Muslims always tell you, have you consulted a scholar? Well, because they are required to consult a scholar. Because they need to speak to those who know if they do not. And of course, they do not know, as we know. So now, the Mujtahid Mutlaq are absolute experts. Now, though an absolute expert in Islamic legal reasoning, a Mujtahid Mutlaq such as Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, or Ahmad is obliged to know what relates to every subject matter in sacred law. Now, these four scholars are known as the Mujtahid Mutlaq, meaning they are absolute masters of Islam and absolute masters of the Sharia. So, in
Okay,
this
here,
discussion, yep, go
here
on.
I will go.
Sure,
Please go one step back.
sure, I'll go one
So,
step back.
guys, understand this. The Sunni Islam has four major scholars, and they and the people who follow them are called four school of thoughts. So Hanafi, Maliki, Hanbali, Shafi. These are the four major schools of thoughts of Sunni Islam. They come from these names. Abu Hanifa is Hanafi. Malik comes Maliki. Imam Shafi gave Shafi. Okay, or Ahmad is Hanbali. So these four
Hmm.
are considered the ones who has the most authority on transmitting the narrative of Quran, the narrative of Quran.
Hmm.
Now, when when these fours are agreed on certain things, and there are a lot of things that they are agreed on, and that's why you have the Sharia. Those are considered to be unchangeable Sharia. Okay, that's what we are telling you. That becomes a sacred law. That
Yes.
becomes a sacred law, and that is why the word is mujtahid. We call it, in normally speaking, we call it mujtahidins. So these are the mujtahidins. Okay, so that's the reality, and that is why the Sharia on the basic level can never be changed. It's not possible. When the Muslimin are in power, they have to apply that. Please, brother.
Okay, so no other scholars, except one, has higher authority. Now understand that these are the only four scholars to be given the title Mujtahid Mutlaq, the basically the absolute scholars, the perfect scholars, the ones with the greatest understanding. And also these four schools, right? So, in this discussion, this is within the reliance of the traveler. You can download link in the description. What they say is the other schools do not have authority because they've introduced errors because they did not fully verify what they were doing, and they do not thus have authority because of error within their work. These four scholars have achieved safety from textual corruption and have been able to discern the genuine from the poorly authenticated, and they have done what is called ijtihad mutlaq. Now, this is taken from the Encyclopedia of Islam. This is a major, this is the gold standard for the study of Islam in academic settings, even utilized in Islamic universities around the world. So, in law, it's the creative act of judgment through which the founding imams derived from the revealed sources a systematic structure of law. Further information, volume 10, page 137. Mutlaq means absolute. In law, it is applied to the mujtahids of the heroic age, the founders of the schools who are called mujtahid mutlaq, a title which none after them has borne. There's only one guy that can vie with them, and that is Al-Ghazali. However, these men are considered the absolute scholars, so their rulings are absolute. Okay, and
Because
I'll
all the
yeah.
schools of thought have an ijtihad on it. They have an ijtihad on it, and that is why they are absolute. So realize that, very important. Because do not let these Westerner Islam 5.0 lying, deceptive, taqiyya based people deceive you. Do not let them deceive you, because when they have the governance, this is what is going to be implemented.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
Right. Now, it should be noted to buy a copy of the Encyclopedia of Islam will cost you roughly $36,000. Okay. If you want to rent it for your classes, it'll cost you about $3,000 a month. So it is extremely expensive to get. Okay. Now,
And you are
the,
getting it for free, guys. So understand, these things that you are getting here for free, Al Azhar University, if you actually go to the second year and third year, then you will get to these kind of information. Then you will get to this kind of the information. The second year and third year, it is not even in the first year. So
yeah,
realize what you are getting today over here is meat of the meat, which you would spend thousands of dollars to get this information.
yeah.
FYI, please, brother.
So, so let's talk about the influence of the Sharia for a moment, right? So let's look at Islamic morality, how they view morality, how they are different, how their minds work differently. So we're talking about the good, the bad, and the Sharia. So, for instance, within Sunni Islam, it says here, it cannot be said that an act which the mind thinks is good is therefore good in the eyes of Allah. So what you would rationally think is good, Allah might not deem that as good. Okay? In other words, it's performance called for, that you should do it, and that you are rewarded by Allah, or that whatever the mind feels to be bad is thus bad in the eyes of Allah, right? The basic premise of Sunni Islam, or the schools of thought, especially the Shafi school in this case, is that the lawgiver, and notice the lawgiver, are both Muhammad and Allah. In other words, synonymous with Allah or his messenger. In other words, they are seen to be one and the same. They speak with the same voice and the same authority. Right? So the lawgiver in the Sharia is considered to be Muhammad and Allah. Whatever Muhammad has said and done, it is the same as if Allah said it or ordered it. So it says here, the basic premise of this school of thought is that the good of the acts of those morally responsible is what the lawgiver, Allah, his messenger, has indicated is good by permitting it or asking it to be done. So in other words, if Muhammad or Allah permitted something or asked for it to be done, it becomes good. And bad is what the lawgiver has indicated is bad by asking for it not to be done. Good is not what reason considers good, nor is the bad what reason considers bad. In other words, ignore your reason, ignore your logic, because good and bad, according to Islam, is the sacred law, not reason. Your thoughts, Adam?
I think this is pretty clear. This is already pretty clear, and I have shown that in many locations, that if you are a Muslim, you cannot think from your brain. It's not asked of you to think. The thinking is stopped, the thinking is blocked. The only thing that you can do is blindly follow what is written. Full stop. That's a full stop there. You can't even ask question 5101. You can't even ask questions, because if you ask according to Allah, you will go astray.
Right, correct.
So this is like this perfect. That's
Yeah.
absolutely right.
Yeah, I could go into much more depth, but I don't want to get stuck on any one point for too long. I mean, there's a lot more to be said about this within the books, but of course, you guys can find them and read them. So, anyway, so I just wanted to give an introduction, but let's do a brief overview of the time period that we are looking at here. Right, so let's have a look at the development of the Sharia. So, you have a taste of what it is and how it influences Islam. And you know that we're going to be focusing on Imam Shafi. So, first, there was the prophetic period, roughly from, up to the time from the time Muhammad became a prophet to the time he died. So the Quran is revealed, right? It is transcribed. The Hadith and the Sunnah events occurred. And of course, these become the foundations of the Sharia, the Islamic law and the Fiqh. Then, at that time, there was no need for independent legal reasoning as Muhammad was alive. Then there was more emphasis on morality than on law. Then you had the Rashidun period, right? The Quran is finalized. The Hadith and the Sunnah were still oral traditions. They were not yet written down, right? And now we have the beginnings of Islamic law. So let's continue. So much later on, around 656, the Quran is finalized. So this is much, much later after the death of Muhammad. Conan says, this is stupid nonsense. Conan, why are you such a coward? You still haven't accepted my multiple invitations to come on and meet with me, to discuss, to just read through your Islamic law books. What are you afraid of? Why are you and every single one of your friends afraid of talking with me and just reading your own books? So the Quran is finalized, and now let's move on. And yes,
Let's hold on.
The Quran is
Hold on
nonsense.
over here.
Islam is stupid nonsense. I fully agree with you.
Brother, hold on over
Yes.
here. Go back to
Yep.
the previous slide. You said Quran is finalized in
In theory,
653.
we're
In
getting to
theory, yes,
that.
please,
We're
yeah,
getting
in
to
theory.
that.
It is finalized in theory, but not in reality. You do not have a, so even for the Quran or whatever he is, his real name
Yeah,
is, they do not have a single Quran which matches the current Quran that they have in their hand
that is very true.
for the first 350 years.
Yeah,
Full
we're
stop.
going to get more into that exactly. And the thing is, which Quran is the one in heaven? Conan, of the 37 known variations, which one is the one that's in is the Kitab in paradise with Allah? Which one? You defend Gabe. Oh God, you're getting off topic,
Yeah,
buddy. So stay on topic.
yeah, I just removed him, gave him a timeout. Please carry on, brother. Don't let them
Yes.
distract.
Okay, so moving on. Right now, then you come to the Umayyad period. Right, then we get to roughly at the year 700 to the year 767. We have Hanafi. So you have Abu Hanafi. He is supposedly a rationalist. Okay, but he really was far more focused on the Quran and Hadith. So he didn't believe in human reasoning. Then you have Maliki, who comes a little bit later. Then you have the Abbasid Caliphate. And then you have Shafi coming along from 767, and he died around 820. So he was spent much of his formative years in Iraq, and Iraq is important to us. We're going to get to that. He developed the methodology of Islamic law. So he's the one who reconciled some of the difficulties between human reason, because Islam says, the Sharia says reason is not to be followed if it conflicts with the Sharia. So he found a way to integrate those, let's say. Okay, so his school is established in Egypt, Arabia, Africa, Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on. Fine. And then we have the Hanbali school. Now, Hanbalis are roughly 4% of Sunni Muslims, so they are a very minor school. They're a very, very small group, right? So I'm not going to get into much detail. I just wanted to give you just an idea of what's happening. Let's look at this here. Muhammad dies 632,
Very
right?
important slide, guys.
Muhammad dies 632. So now we have, I'm just going to move my camera down to the bottom right. So now we've got the verses were only collected after Muhammad's death, right? And the first supposed Medinan codex is collated here. So this is well after Muhammad's death. This is around 650, 660.
And
Ibn
this is
it
theoretical. This is,
Yes,
you don't have any proof. All the Muslims, you do not have the
correct.
proof. This is theoretical because you stated it. So that's why it's here.
So now there's something. So now the variant readings of the Quran. Now you're looking at the 800s. So notice this is more than 200 years after the death of Muhammad that you've got your variant readings. In other words, there was supposed to be one Quran here, but suddenly we have seven of them at least. And in fact, we're going to look, that number increases and goes all over the place. The Hadith are created in this period, and the Hadith are only compiled around 900. So that's 300 years after the death of Muhammad. Notice you've got Tabari who's in the 900s. Shafi dies in 820. Ibn Hisham, so Muhammad's biography is only written 200 years after he dies. 200 years. And don't forget, there are no original written records.
Once
So,
again, realize this, guys, realize this. That this is to emphasize the point. I'm not saying that Lloyd is not saying that, but
hmm,
emphasis is important. Emphasis. Hadith is written 300 years later. You do not have any evidence. Bukhari, who's the first writer of Hadith, is writing 2,200 kilometers away from Makkah and Medina.
correct.
2,200 kilometers away from Makkah and Medina. The first biography, which is called Siratun Nabi by Ibn Hisham, is not there. You do not have the original. You have a copy of the copy. Is writing at least 200 years after the death of Muhammad. Then you come in Ibn Ishaq. So who, like, it's, you don't have anything.
Yeah, we do not have the
Nothing.
original of Ibn Ishaq. I mean, we've got Ibn Hisham,
Exactly.
so we don't know
And
what he actually wrote.
And
So,
even the variant readings that he highlighted in purple, variant readings after 800 that you have, those variant readings on the razam level. The razam means the base text without the dots and without the shadda, gamma, kasra or anything. The base text, the razam. On the razam level, it does not matches with the current Quran, number one. Number two, you do not even have the full Quran by one person in those variant regions at this point in time. So what do you have? Nothing.
Yeah. Also notice the Meccan period is very, very short. Then you've got the Damascus, the caliphate that was in Damascus. But let's look at Baghdad. Look at the amount of time that Baghdad ruled, not Mecca. There was a lot of time from the mid 700s all the way through where Islam was formed, was properly formed, where the Sharia, the Fiqh, was actually formed. So most of the development of Islam occurred here during this period and was only finalized in the 13th century. So a lot happened in this period, much more than happened within Mecca. So a lot of the work occurred here. Now, I do want to make, I'm going to go slightly off topic here. I want to mention and I'm gonna actually let me go. Let me no wait. Let me step forward for a minute, and then I will go back to another slide I want to show you. So briefly, we'll deviate to the development of the Quran. So there are many contradictory stories relating to the collection of the Quran. Then you have the development of 7 codices. Uthman supposedly collected the Medinan Codex as the official consonantal codex, right, meaning in agreement or harmony, as the main text of the Quran. Other texts came from Mecca and from Basra and Kufa. This is important because this is Iraq, and we're going to talk about Iraq. Recent research indicates there were many more codices, and then written texts did not appear before the 8th century. So there are no written texts prior to the 8th century, which means there was a very long gap of 100 years in which they were playing broken telephone with these codices. The text in the codices had no diacritical marks, right? Which means that those words could well have meant something else. As we know, this has been discussed in detail. Your comment before I move on, Adam?
Yes, and I have done multiple streams on this point, and even I have done debates on this point where the Muslims runs in a circle like a dog trying to catch his own tail. But basically, that's the reality. The dots changes the meaning. For example, Hun ibadullah means Allah's slave. Hun andallah, with Allah. So basically the verse of the Quran says Indar Rahman or Abdar Rahman. That changes the whole text, whether he is with the Allah, Andar Rahman, or is he the slave of Allah, Abdar Rahman. The only difference between the two is the dot, whether it is on the top or
Right.
on the bottom. So I have done multiple streams on that. So you guys who are watching my channel already know that. Please, brother.
Okay, so yeah, this is not a lecture on the Quran, but I just want to mention some of the important stuff. Let's look at the Encyclopedia of Religion from Charles Adams. It must be emphasized that far from being a single text passed down inviolate from the time of Uthman, thousands of variant readings of particular verses were known. The variants affected even the Uthmanic Codex, making it difficult to know what its true original form may have been. Although Muslims of the present time have forgotten the very existence of these variant versions of the Quran, Arthur Jeffries has listed 15 primary codexes from the companions and a large number of secondaries. So understand, let's there were plenty of various versions, and the official version of Islam was developed ultimately within Iraq. So let's have a look at Iraq.
And
Now,
let's
yep,
see how far move the pointer where
yep.
Kaaba Makkah should be, so that they should know.
Oh
Like
man,
it's way beyond the screen. I know.
it's
Move the
it's a
point.
long way. I would
Yeah,
actually have to
it's
bring up. I'd have to bring up a map, man. Then I would have to
it,
bring up a map. It's
so imagine guys. So here in this map, you can't even see Kaaba. It is down south to a little towards the south and a
southwest.
little
Okay.
towards the west of Iraq or Baghdad. So if I take Baghdad as my focal point, it should be down south and a little towards the eastern side, down southeast a little. That's where Makkah is, 2,000 kilometers away from Baghdad. And all of your early development as a Muslim is happening in Baghdad. Why? Did you ever thought about it? Why? Please, brother.
Yeah, it's quite a distance between them. So yeah. Okay, so guys, now you've got Iraq, you've got Kufa in the south, and I want you to notice you've got Kufa in the south with a Jewish seminary, a very famous, very well known. This was the main center of Jewish learning in Iraq. So getting into the meat of the development of the Sharia, now to know a little bit about some of the people and what was going on. right? So you've got Kufa in the south, right? And then, of course, you've got two more academies near Ramadi here and near Baghdad. You've got two more major Jewish seminaries, so three within the country, and of course, one more Islamic seminary right here in the same city as the Jewish seminary. Now, let's see what we have to say here. So, finding that material influences causing changes in the doctrines of other Islamic law schools continued to proceed almost exclusively from the law schools of Iraq. So, Iraq is where Islamic law developed. It did not develop in Medina, it did not develop in Saudi Arabia. Mohammedan jurisprudence originated in Iraq. The discovery that Islamic jurisprudence emerged on the banks of the Euphrates and not on the sands of Arabia, home of the Prophet and the birthplace of Islam, invites further investigation. And this document, again, linked in the description, what you'll find is that this document starts to tell you that things are not exactly as people believe they are. There was a huge amount of intellectual development over hundreds of years happening in Iraq. Now, let me just move this back to the top. So, the site of the most important early Islamic law school was the Hanafi school at Kufa, and this was close to the Jewish academies of Surah and Pumbedita, where scholars studied the Talmud throughout the formative period of Islamic law. And there were no problems of
Ah,
communication because the early,
ah.
yeah, go
So
on.
you are saying that is why we have the influence in the Islam from the Talmud. Guys, do you remember the copy paste prophet that we did a couple of weeks ago, and we showed how many things Islam took from the Talmud? Now you are getting the meat of the subject. How and why? Please, brother, repeat these two sentences again.
So the site of the most important early Islamic law school, the Hanafi school at Kufa, was close to the Jewish academies of Surah and Pumbedita, where scholars studied the Talmud throughout the formative period of Islamic law. And further, it says there would have been no problems of communication. The early Iraqi jurists included local converts to Islam, both Jews and others, who spoke Eastern Talmudic Aramaic, which was the lingua franca of Iraq, or the common language of Iraq, for centuries after the Arab conquest.
See, guys, so now you have the historical context to see how the Talmudic influence is getting into Islam. How the Talmudic influence is getting into Islam. And that is why, you don't even have a single contextual text before that. So when the text is being written, you see the influence of the Talmud in it. Why? Do you ever think about that? This is the meat which our brother Lloyd is showing. This channel needs to go viral.
Right.
Please,
No,
brother.
thank you. I do appreciate that. So now let's talk about Imam Shafi. Now he is known as a Sheikh al-Islam. Now there are something like 27 or 28 Sheikh al-Islam. These are scholars of Islam. These are the finest, most famous scholars of Islam, the most influential. Right now, of Islam's 1400-year history, only about 27 or 28 of them are known as Sheikh al-Islam. Imam Shafi obviously is one of them. So these are the best scholars that Islam has produced. Right? There's only one above them, and that is Ghazali, right? So one of the four great imams of the Sunni school of law. He's also entitled, interestingly, Nasir al-Hadith, which means defender of Hadith, right? So this is one of his titles. He was born in Palestine, 767 AD. He was part of the Abbasid Caliphate, and he's known as the 3rd century Mujaddid, a reformer or renewer of the faith. In Sunni Islam, they believe that once a century, a scholar will be born who will renew the faith and reinvigorate Islam, who will lead people and inspire them with the faith. And he dies in 820 AD. Now, he lived in Mecca, Medina, Yemen, Egypt, and he lived in Baghdad. So he spent a lot of time in Iraq. And yes, David, he was the defender of Hadith and defeater of Hadith. Well, yeah. So, and this is very important. Now, he wrote 2 copies of the Risala, one when he was younger, one when older. Both of them are technically obsolete now. They've been absorbed into other Islamic law books. He attempted a synthesis of reasoning and revelation as Islamic law. So in other words, the revelation in the Quran and Sunnah, he was figuring out how can we utilize human reasoning but limit it to what is allowed within the Sharia. Limit it so that we can combine the two. Hanafi wasn't able to do this. However, Shafi was able to do this, and he solved a problem that had been plaguing because Islam was first very much about what's in the Sunnah. The civilization grew, became bigger, more complex, and suddenly there were situations that were not covered within the Quran and the Sunnah that they were dealing with. And then they had to apply themselves to figure out how to deal with this. But now they had these two sets of ideas, one man made and one supposedly coming out of the scriptures. And they were not able to figure this out. There was this fight constantly back and forth between these two schools, reasoning versus tradition, and he harmonized and synchronized between the two. Your comments before I go on, Adam?
Yeah, once again, dude, you tell the most important information with such a nice flat face. Our Muslim brothers and sisters will not be able to comprehend. So, once again, who is Shafi? Once again, brother, who is Shafi? Why did he do that? Number one. Number two, what did the basic Hanaf he was not able to do it? Repeat it.
So he was able to harmonize the conflict between your own personal reasoning and
Hmm.
what was the Sunnah, right? So
Exactly.
he was now trying to find a way to harmonize, and he found the method which was adopted and became the Islamic consensus.
That's where you start to see the development of Sharia in its full essence.
Mm-hmm.
But this, who is this guy? This is guy the Sheikhul Islam. The Sheikhul Islam. Without this guy, you cannot even comprehend Islam. That's where the problem lies. So either reject all of them, which you cannot reject, as we have shown them. These are the they are
Mujtahid
mutafiqqi
mutlaq.
alayh mujtahideen. These are the mujtahideens of Islam, and they are on the uh, mutafikka alayh. So they are on the mutafikka alayh and they are the mujtahideen. So you cannot reject them. Without them, you have nothing. Because
Yeah,
if you reject them, all the early history and the golden age of Islam, so called, which Muslims call, is a blasphemy. Is a blasphemy. So
yeah,
now that's so you see the whole context. You have nothing that is coming from the Muhammad's era. Nothing, not even Quran, not even Hadiths. Everything is coming and becoming developed in Iraq, and that's where you have the basic things, and that's where you actually derive everything. And then Imam Shafi came and he combined all of these things to show how this hadith or how this seerah or how this thing or how Talmudic things actually coincides into one thing, and you have Jewish influence in Islam. Please, brother, carry on.
right, we'll continue. So the century that he lived in, from 701 to 800 approximately, this is the century that saw the initial development of Islamic law and jurisprudence. You had legal theory and the application of the law. So also the development of legal reasoning within the confines of the Sharia. And also, what is the role of law in society? Because they went from being camel herders to now having this massive global empire. So now the
Once
eight
again, once again, they come from camel herder to
running a global empire
exactly.
of
So now
conquest.
these camel herders, after the death of Muhammad, Uthman is the major person. Abu Bakr did something, yes, but Uthman actually went out conquering everyone. And you see the Pact of Umar in Quran chapter number 9 verse number 29. If you see the Tafsir Ibn Kathir, you will see the Pact of Umar all the way there, and I've done multiple streams on that. Quran chapter number 9 verse number 29. So you see these Shafi and Hanbalis, they are not actually saying anything from themselves. They are using the early scholars and the Quran and the Sahabas, all of that. They are correlating them, they are combining them into one essence and giving you the
Mhm.
Sharia, which becomes as the jurisprudence for every Muslim to come afterwards.
Correct.
These people are laying the foundation of Islam by collecting all the things. So Uthman took from Quran chapter 9 verse number 29. He did something. This guy over here is actually combining all of these things. What Muhammad did in his Siratul Nabi, what Uthman did later, and what Abu Bakr did as his Harbur Rida, and all of these things combining into one codex called Sharia. And that is why it
Yeah.
is Muttafiqa alayh, and these people are called Mujtahideen of Islam. Please, brother.
Yeah. I should note that the Sharia used to be thousands of different manuscripts. Of course, over time, they consolidated into a number of shall we say, these days, authoritative manuscripts. Now, understand the Talmud is a book the Talmud's a collection of books, but let's call it a book for convenience sake. You can go to the Talmud. The Sharia is not structured or written like that. It is deliberately obscure. So, for instance, let's look at the Shafi school. You've got the Reliance of the Traveler as the most popular Sharia manual in the world. In the Hanafi school, you have the Hedaya, 4 volumes, 2,652 pages, very detailed. However, no one Sharia manual covers every topic, covers every subject, has all the information. So in other words, they have a name for it, and I can't remember what it is, but these are like hypertext on a web page. You link between pages. They wrote this stuff deliberately in a way that is distributed. So you can read a book, but then you need to know for instance, some Sharia manuals will cover marriage. So you can go to a particular book and get all the info on marriage. But then if you're looking at a particular aspect of, let's say, divorce, you need to go to a particular scholar who's in another book. But then he might reference another scholar in another book, but you need to know who that scholar in that book is to go to that particular reference. So you actually need dozens of books to actually get anything of detail. So, however, within each school, there are certain authoritative books. So they have these major books, and of course, the scholars have to study these things. What do the scholars do for 7 years when they go to Islamic University? They start with the basic books and they work their way up to the more complex, ending with the Hedaya. However, the Reliance of the Traveler, which is linked in the description, this is the most popular Sunni Islamic manual, and also it is the most endorsed manual in the world because it is a compendium. So it has a little bit of everything. So it's the most ideal manual for you to learn and start with, right? I'll talk about that in a minute. I'll take a little deviation. Actually, can I do a little deviation, Adam, while we are here? Um, someone, you understand, one of the issues with ahruf and qira'at. Can I mention that quickly, Adam?
Oh, please, please, brother.
So, for instance, when they talk about, we had Yasser Qadi talk about akhruf and qira'at. And when you speak to people, they tell you, akhruf, qira'at, there are just so many variations or so many variant readings. Now, certainly, you must understand this is an extract from the index of the Encyclopedia of Islam. Islamic words have multiple meanings. Jihad has there are 14 different kinds of known jihad. Okay, there are 14 kinds of jihad that are known. All right, so jihad can be struggle, but jihad's major legal definition, the major definition of jihad, is to make war on non-Muslims to enforce Islam. Let's look at ahruf. Okay, it is the plural of the word harf, and yes, one of its meaning is letter of the alphabet. It is also a Quranic
Exactly.
reading or a dialect. Now you can go to volume 3, page 204 and 205. They are very short entries talking about these tiny little entries. The major entry, when you go and look through the books, when you go to volume 3, page 595, you will find that the major entry, the longest entry on what ahruf means is as follows. The ilm al-huruf, onomatomancy, a magical practice based on the occult properties of the letters of the alphabet and of the divine and angelic names which they form. Ahruf, the major meaning of ahruf within Islam is magic.
By the way, ilmul aharuf, the ilm word comes from knowledge. So
Yeah.
knowledge of aharuf is a magical practice.
Yes, it is word magic. Now, we're not going to go to volume 3 to look it up. It's quite detailed, but you're going to so in Islam, so the Quran, you've got fire words, water words, earth words, and wind words. Ponder that. We can do that another time, but understand also the words have different numbers. It's all about gematria, geomancy. You'd be amazed what you find. This is why they always say, well, it's multiple. Yes, it is this. They'll say jihad just means struggle. Nonsense. It doesn't. And Quranic reading dialect, yes, it does mean that. It also means this, and this is the major meaning. Understand? So you need to understand that you're being fooled all the time by these people. So I'll move on. Just thought
Okay,
I'd throw
so
that out there.
jihad, struggle. So struggle is the basic word. Fair enough. That is the dictionary word. We understand that. But struggle
Right.
in what sense? I have done multiple streams on that. So basically, even though that there are 14 different ways to do jihad, but 3 different ways are described by the Muhammad in their hadiths. I have done multiple streams on that. So please go back and watch my streams. So number one, jihad bil lisan means jihad by your tongue, lisan. Jihad bil
Hmm.
lisan by your tongue. So if you see an evil, stop it by your tongue. Jihad bil shamshir or jihad bil bayna yaday, jihad bil yadayhi means with your hands or with shamshir means your sword. So it depends on which hadith you will see. Some
Yeah.
will say shamshir, the sword, some will say hands. So basically fighting. So there were no guns back in those days, so it was shamshir. So now the third is jihad bin nafs. And Muhammad said nafs means your inner heart, inner heart. So you will at least say it from your inner side that this is wrong.
Oh,
And Muhammad said the jihad, the struggle from your inner nafs, saying it in your heart that it is bad, is the lowest level of deen, lowest level of your
yeah.
religion. So imagine that. This is what Muhammad taught. So all the Westerner Muslims who say that are either doing lying to you guys because Islam allows lying, and Lloyd will show this. I know he has that. I've seen that. So, or they don't know that they are fallen in the traps of their Westerner scholars, which presents you Islam 5.0. It's not even Islam 2.0. It's Islam version 5.0. FYI, guys.
Yeah. Actually, I'll get back to that in a minute. Yeah, for some reason I let me just bring, yeah, or maybe I should just bring this up, but it's taking me a moment. Okay, permissible lying. I need to just so David Wright asked about lying. Okay, now let me just nearly there.
Take your time, brother. No worries. So in the meantime, let me tell you guys. So what I'm saying is simple. Without lying, without lying,
Oh,
you cannot promote Islam. And that's why lying is allowed and permitted as the basic mean of spreading Islam.
okay,
So,
well,
brother,
yeah, on this
please
point, so, okay, earlier I mentioned the word, so slightly off topic, but let's get back onto this is about Sharia as well. So, earlier I mentioned we need to talk about doctrine, not just about verses. People go, wow, this hadith says, and that Quran verse says, ignore that. Ignore that. Understand that the Quran has been abrogated, very few verses actually made it, and those verses that are still relevant are in the Sharia. They are quoted, the context is given in the Sharia. The application, how they understood what you must do with them, is in the Sharia. Same for the Hadith, and the Hadith also abrogate the Quran. Now, what remains of what has not been abrogated is, as I said, within the Sharia. Now, David Rai asked, what do you mean jihad of the tongue? You know, jihad of words. So, for instance, the major doctrine of Islam, the most important doctrine within Islam, its foundational doctrine is called commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. Now, for instance, there is the obligation, I'm going to zoom in here, the obligation to command the right. This is an obligation. Obligation being a legal word within Islam. It is something that you must do. It is a communal obligation, and there are levels of, there are a series of steps that you follow. For instance, when you talk of, you first have to know the degrees of, so the degrees of severity. You have to know the wrong act that a Muslim or non-Muslim, and this applies to you even as a non-Muslim. So you must know what the wrong act is. So then you need to explain that something is wrong. That's what Muslims do when they come online and they tell you that you're wrong. So then you must forbid the act. When they start to tell you you're wrong and you must stop doing this, stop lying, etc., they start saying this because they are required to do this as part of the doctrine of forbidding the wrong and commanding the right. Then you must censure with harsh words, and this quite literally means abuse them verbally, quite literally, if you go through the doctrine in detail. Next, you must right the wrong by hand. By hand, they mean, okay, speak, you go non-verbal, in other words. Then the next step in Islam is to use intimidation and then proceed to assault. And then, if that doesn't work, get friends and get weapons and start to use force of arms to make someone do something. Understand, this is taught. This is the sequence within Islam. This is what they teach. So understand, Christianity, I have no idea where this is, where intimidation, assault, and force of arms are taken and explained as legitimate ways of disagreement.
So this comes from basically this comes from two different areas. One is Quran chapter number 3 verse number 110, bil maruf wa tantahu anil munkar. So
Yep.
basically it says that you enjoy what is right and forbid what is wrong. So you
Yes.
have to forbidding what is wrong. But if they do not agree with you in the forbidding of the wrong, there are so many doctrines which describe how do you do that. In the Sahih hadiths that I've shown you previously already, it says bring those people with the chain around their necks and
Yes.
drag them so until they accept la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Now the thing is, This is the reality. And Sharia actually combine these verses and these ahadiths and give it to you in one single particular document.
Place.
It is
Yes.
not out of the Quran and Hadith. It is the implication of Quran and Hadith in a confined book. And these books gives you the references all together. But
Yeah.
you know, they made it difficult for you to
To
get it
understand.
and learn it. Yes.
Now, the nice thing is the Reliance summarizes a whole lot of the top, the
The
main
lines of
rulings. The
travelers, right?
Reliance summarizes this, and it's great to use. Now, we spoke about lying earlier. Let me just quickly go into Islamic lying. So, lying, they have a chapter on lying within the Sharia, within Islamic law. Okay, you have unlawful lying, and then you have permissible lying, lying that is legal, not just morally right, but legal. And in fact, then you have another category called obligatory lying. And when is lying obligatory in Islam? When is it something that you must do as a duty? Well, it is when you're trying to circumvent those forbidding the permissible. What are Adam and I doing? We are forbidding the permissible. In other words, it is permissible to enforce Islam. We are attempting to stop the spread of Islam. It is Islamic, it's their deen to spread Islam. It is their duty, their fard. We are trying to stop this. So, therefore, to circumvent us who are forbidding the permissible, it is obligatory for them to lie. Okay, so I will just step,
Definitely.
yeah. So I'll just quickly go into, I'll bring up some notes on lying here. So, so in the chapter on permissible lying, what is said here, I'm going to zoom in so that you can see the screen. He who
Please give them
settles,
the reference as well, brother.
yeah, so this is within the, so this is when in the, within the Reliance of the Traveler, again, linked in the description, right? And also it's in the chat, section R 8.2. And in my PDF reader, it's page 763, and the physical page is 744 in the book. So Muhammad says, right, now this is within the Sharia. He who settles disagreements between people to bring about good or says something commendable is not a liar. So if a Muslim comes to you and says, you know, we worship Jesus too, we are brothers, that is commendable because they are settling disagreements. Even if they are lying, they are not lying according to Islam because they are settling a disagreement, they are preventing friction, they're trying to bring about good. And what is good? Well, what the Sharia says is good. So even though they are lying to you, in our terms, in their terms, they are not.
So
Understand?
hold on, brother, over
I
here.
need
Hold
to
on.
try and zoom in properly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, hold on over here, right here, while they see the screen. So you are actually showing these people that as a scholar of Islam, when he is on the stage and he is telling us, hey, we believe in Jesus just like you believe in Jesus, or you we believe in this because you believe in this and all that, or Islam teaches us to be peaceful and la ikraha fi deen, even though
Yes.
that's an abrogated verse. You are telling me that while they know it is abrogated, still they are proclaiming it, knowing that it is abrogated. They are lying, and it is permissible, not only
It's
just permissible,
obligatory.
but it is obligatory. It
And
is
I can give you,
required.
yes, it's required, and I'll give you the ruling on it. So this is an explicit statement that lying is permissible for a given interest. The best analysis is by Imam Abu Hamid Ghazali. Now, this analysis is taken from his book, the Ihya Ulum al-Din. This is the second most read and the second most common Islamic spiritual guide after the Quran. So this is the second most popular source for spiritual teaching in Islam after the Quran, the Ihya Ulum al-Din by Abu Ghazali, who says, speaking is a means to achieve objectives. If a praiseworthy aim is attainable through both telling the truth and lying, it is unlawful to accomplish through lying because there's no need for it. When it is possible to achieve such an aim by lying, but not by telling the truth, it is permissible to lie if attaining the goal is permissible. When is it not permissible to spread Islam? When is it not permissible to make Islam supreme? When is it not permissible to promote Allah? When is it not permissible to promote Muhammad? Never. So, therefore, it is always permissible to lie because the goal is always permissible, i.e., when the purpose of lying is to circumvent someone who is preventing one from doing something permissible, and it is obligatory to lie if the goal is obligatory.
So you are telling me that if I do not lie as a scholar at Deen or as a normal Muslim, if I do not lie at that particular point, I am actually a sinner.
You are
Basically,
actually not fulfilling your deen. Well, yes.
so basically I'm a sinner, because if I'm not fulfilling my deen, so I'm a sinner basically. So
Although
basically, if I do
technically,
not lie,
mm,
technically I am one sinner. Number two, I am basically
well,
going against the law, and hence I should be
technically not
punishable
a
by the
sinner,
law.
you are weak. Because remember, lying with your mouth is one of the main forms of jihad, right? Jihad
Hmm.
al-lisan. So now you are
Yes.
lying with your mouth. Now, if you are doing it, if you're not saying what you need to say, then you are actually being very weak. We need to go into the doctrine of commanding the right and forbidding the wrong to explain how this functions. I'm not going to do that now. That's a different day. But understand this is about lying. Now, someone asked about the Da'if Hadith thing. Shall we just quickly do that on the
No,
Da'if Hadith, how
not
they
no
lie
no no
about the
no not
Hadith?
today. Not today. Not today. I have already done that, guys. Look at my
Okay,
my link, which I did like 2 days ago. Please watch that. It is about the hadiths by using Ibn Fuban al Farouk.
okay.
So please do that. I don't want to go into that. Please, brother.
Okay, no
Next.
problem. So let's continue with this. So in the 8th century, we see an overwhelming movement towards human reasoning, right? So people want, so Islamic society is becoming westernized in that sense. Contact with the Greeks, and they're starting to think like Westerners. And then, of course, everything pushes in the opposite direction, back towards the Sunnah. So within a short period, a huge volume of prophetic traditions, the Hadith, appear in legal doctrines, and hadith become important in law. They were not important prior to that. So they became important under Shafi. He was the one who defended them as legitimate. So he's the one who said, no, we need to start utilizing these traditions as the basis for our reasoning. So Quran and Sunnah then became dominant, and what they call Rai, human reasoning, is pushed out. Shafi is
Exactly.
against the use of free human reasoning. He was very much against it. Hanbal was even worse than him. So he doesn't want human reasoning, which is not based on tradition or divine precedent. So you can think as long as you do not violate the Sunnah of Muhammad. And they talk of, now istiqsan is in law, they say that reasoning is arbitrary personal opinion. So they don't have much respect. Everything is really bound to tradition. Now you've got a method of finding the law which for any reason is contradictory to the usual qiyas, or reasoning by analogy. In other words, you're supposed to find an example of something within the scriptures and then apply that reasoning to your case. You're not supposed to think freely about things. Everything is supposed to be found within the example of the sunnah. So reasoning is only allowed if it embraces revelation. Adam?
So yes, chaos. Chaos is a very important thing. Okay, I'm sorry, brother. I'm sorry. I'll
Yep.
take my words back. Now, because we have this slide, you have to show
Yeah.
the jurisprudence of Sahih, Hasan, and Daif. Please, brother, show it. My bad. Please
Okay,
show
let's
it.
actually, so fine. Let's quickly go there. So, guys, just to settle the issue, now I'm not going to show everything that's within the book. This is a book called the Fath al-Bari. This is a new translation, which is a collaboration of the two major Sunni Islamic um, seminaries, Al Azhar and Medina, Al Medina in Saudi Arabia. So the top scholars have been working on this, and they've told us here. So, settling the question of why Muslims lie to you about weak hadith. Weak hadith are like let's just do this. Removing weak hadith from works was not the example of the Islamic scholars. Otherwise, Imam Ibn Hajar would not have included them himself in the Fath al-Bari. The Fath al-Bari is the victory of the Creator. It's one way to translate it. It is the major commentary on Sahih Bukhari. So understand that no scholar of any kind of knowledge or training will go to the hadith directly, read them, and try to figure out what does this hadith mean. He will go to the Fath al-Bari, which is the commentary, it's the tafsir of Sahih Bukhari. Just like we had tafsir of the Quran, we have tafsir of the hadith as well. So the scholar will go to the previous scholars. Remember, every generation of Muslims gets weaker and weaker and weaker. We currently have the weakest, worst generation of Muslims. The previous generations were better. Understand? So now they go to those the great scholars, the Sheikh al-Islam. They look at what they have to say and they say, well, they figured that this means this. So the scholars go to the tafsir. We don't have access to these tafsirs. Anyway, so Imam Ibn Hajar included weak hadith in the Fath al-Bari as sources to take knowledge from, because weak hadith are used to support opinions, because a weak hadith containing the words of the Prophet is preferred over pure opinion and personal reasoning. And this is the example set by all the scholars, including Imam Bukhari, who used weak hadith deliberately in his work Al-Adab al-Mufrad. The Sahih of Imam Bukhari is a collection of the Sahih hadith specifically. It is not a collection of the only hadith that scholars use. The scholars themselves state a Sahih hadith has about a 99 to a 100% chance of being entirely accurate. Hasan hadith has about an 85 to 99% chance of being entirely accurate. A Da'if hadith has only about a 45 to 85% chance of being entirely accurate. And
Sorry,
even,
sorry, 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 sorry. Please,
yeah,
please, please, brother.
I'll pause.
Daif Hadith has what? What? Please
A
repeat. Daif
45
Hadith.
to 85% chance of being entirely accurate.
So up to 80% that
85.
Hadith, 85, sorry, up to 85% a Daif Hadith can be accurate.
Yes. And will continue. It gets
Yeah.
worse for them. Even a
Okay.
fabricated hadith has a 45% chance of being accurate, since the grading it was given may have been wrong or the fabricator may have spoken the truth in this case. Weak hadith should not be treated like fabricated hadith because an 85% chance of being entirely accurate is a very high chance. If you received 85% on your test scores, would you throw that out saying that isn't worth anything? So
That
each
would be a B plus, won't it?
that word, it's an
Or a
A
B
actually. It's an
minus, somewhere
A
around.
minus.
B.
There is no such thing in Islam as banning an entire grade of hadiths from being used. There is no such thing. Even fabricated hadith are still studied because one scholar may grade it fabricated, while another may grade it sahih. And there are many famous examples among the scholars of this occurring.
So basically, I have done, guys, but I've done a live stream and I've shared the link on both channels in the live chat on Ibn Fuban Farooq, and I showed that he used a scholar of the 20th century writing something in 1950. Is it 20th century or 21st century if he's writing in 1950? I don't know about
20th
century, so
century.
forget that. So 20th century. So he's using a 20th century scholar to proclaim this hadith to be da'if, whereas the granddaddy of that scholar actually called it Hasan, and the granddaddy of that scholar called it Asahi. So you see the development of hadith becoming a da'if with the passage of time, even though the earlier scholars were calling it Sahih and Hasan. So that is why the reasoning of da'if hadith is actually da'if in essence, because all the Muslim scholars, and I have been telling many people who are following my channel that in my country, they the scholars of Islam do not think about it to be a daif. They proclaim it in the mosques when they are referring to something. So daif hadith can very well be used in so many areas, but it just simply cannot be used when it is on the jurisprudence of the basic law. That's it. That's it. But even in
Although
the basic
we can go
law,
into the
if you have,
Sharia.
sorry, sorry, brother, even
Sorry.
in the basic law, if it is correlating or making some other hadith or some other reference stronger, you can still use it. So it is all debatable.
Yes.
So daif
Now
hadith is a
notice
very daif argument. Please,
also
brother.
weak is not an attribute of the text of the hadith. So weak is not an attribute of the text. Weak is an attribute of the chain of transmission, the isnad.
Chain
Understand,
of
these are two
narrations.
different things. So when they say that is weak, that means the chain of transmission is potentially weak, not guaranteed to be. So notice within the Sharia, though hadith, so seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. Would you disagree with this? Would you say that's a lie? Because the meaning of this hadith, though the hadith itself is not well authenticated, i.e., being weak, it is true. So this is according to the Sharia itself. And in fact, within the Sharia, it states very bluntly that weak hadiths may be used to derive law from, especially hadith that apply to the Prophet himself, are valid. So weak hadith are in fact are actual valid hadith. Weak hadith are not impermissible. They are in fact completely normal and valid hadith.
So true. This
Yeah.
is the meat, guys. You are getting the information that you will not get normally unless you go for a bachelor's degree in Al-Azhar University. You will not get these documents easily and these references easily. So get the references, use them. Please, brother, carry on.
Yeah. Later on, I'll go to P9.5 and I'll actually talk more about the hadith issue. But notice, so to wrap up on Imam Shafi, so he wanted to establish Muhammad's traditions within the Quran as the sources of the law. He wanted to make Sunnah over reason. understand, he still has a heavy leaning, and as Islam does, Sunnah over reason. Reason is actually technically illegal. So to him, the Sunnah explained and contextualized the Quran. So the doctrine of abrogation that he talks, that we know about, is intended to delineate the relationship between the Quran and the Sunnah when there's a conflict between the two. So more on that later. Now, Shafi's final proposals, right, were that the law must derive from revealed scripture. The Sunnah of Muhammad is a revelation that is binding in legal matters. Now, this gets interesting. There is no contradiction, he says, between the Quran and the Sunnah, or among verses or hadiths within each of the two sources, even though they are obviously contradictory and you need abrogation to sort them out, right? The two sources, he says, they complement and explain each other. They are hermeneutic, as we'd say. And he says that a legal ruling that is derived from an unambiguous and widely transmitted text is certain and is not subject to disagreement, whereas a ruling that is inferred by means of reasoning or by analogy may be subject to disagreement. Okay, fine and well.
What? Sorry. Point number five. Again, let
Five,
me
yeah?
just read it.
Sure.
A legal ruling derived from unambiguous and widely transmitted texts is certain and subject to no disagreement. Guys, did you read that? Guys, did you read that? I love this brother, but this brother gives so much good information with with flat face. I don't know where he, like, come on, man.
Sorry,
Dude,
man.
this is some a hammering thing. This is like, I love your channel, man. I
Thank
love the
you.
information that you give. And
So,
I
yeah, I
watch your
just.
channel. But
Thank you, man.
like these normal people who are watching us, they need to see the slammering hammer because they do not have this basic information. So
Right,
realize this: the text is certain and subject to no disagreement because the legal ruling derived from unambiguous and widely transmitted text. That's a
right,
fact, and that's why they use it. And we are not telling this from our own self. This is written in the sources. The links are in description. Take them.
right. So let's move forward. So now, but however, so he says all this wonderful stuff, but now let's look at this, okay? Very important thing. Before Shafi, jurists had not given the Sunnah divinity. The Sunnah was not considered divine, right? So Shafi was the one who said that the Sunnah carries equal weight to the Quran as a source of authority, that the Sunnah of Muhammad actually is a source for derived law. So except for the word of Allah as transmitted in the Quran, they perceive the words and the acts of the Prophet, though divinely inspired, as a strictly human phenomenon, the ideal conduct of one chosen by Allah, but not Allah's law in the same sense as the Quran. This view was dictated by the Quran's stern condemnation of those who, while professing monotheism, ascribe partners to Allah. To ascribe Muhammad's actions as law would mean that he had the same status as Allah, and this was forbidden by the Quran. Understand? So other scholars did not do this. Shafi made this happen. So, by the consequent desire to avoid even the semblance of deifying the Prophet, they did not want to ascribe divinity to his extra Quranic utterances. In other words, the things that he said outside the Quran, they did not want to give this the force of law because they didn't want
Okay.
to ascribe a partner. So, Shafi basically introduced shirk as a standard feature of Islam.
Okay, hold on. I would disagree with that. Why? Because Quran chapter number 4, verse number 80. I'm sorry, brother, to
Yeah,
disagree
yeah,
with
go
you
on,
that
man.
Shafi did that. Shafi did not do that. Shafi actually took the verses of Quran and use
Yeah,
that
yeah, I'm
to
getting
do
to that
that.
point.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
So
getting to that. Yeah,
basically, okay, thank you, brother. So
yeah,
Quran chapter number 4, verse number 80, it says, imagine what it says. It says, he who obeys the messenger. It does not start with he who obeys the Allah. Please, brother, show Quran
yeah,
chapter number 4, verse number 80 for the people. I'm sorry. This
no
is very
problem.
important. Shafi actually took it into a textual context to show, but
Yeah,
in reality, it is in Quran, and he's using the Quran. Quran says, "He who obeys the messenger has obeyed Allah. He
right.
who obeys the messenger has obeyed Allah." Now, so if you want to obey Allah, you have to obey the messenger. And where do you get the information of the messenger? From the Sirah and from the Ahadith.
Yeah,
So hence they are on the same point. Quran itself is doing blasphemy to begin with, brother. Sorry about that. Please
Yeah,
carry
no,
on.
you're right. So, and this is, well, this is the state of Islam today, right? So Shafi, so prior to Shafi, this was not the case, right? So Shafi's postulation of the divinity of the Sunnah was revolutionary at the time, right? So Shafi found support within the language of the Quran, and he claimed and he proved to the satisfaction of the other jurists that both Quran, the written revelation, and the Sunnah, the oral tradition, stemmed equally from Allah. And he emphasized this equivalence by calling the Quran and the Sunnah the twin roots, how he did this, which is basically subtly conveyed a sense of equal authority. So Shafi's proof text. Now, oddly enough, this is similar to the meaning conveyed by the Talmudic coupling of Mikra and Mishnah. We'll get to that later. So Shafi's proof text for the equal divinity of Quran and Sunnah was the frequent occurrence of the Quranic phrase Al-Kitab wal-Hikmah, the book and the wisdom, the book and the wisdom. So he said,
Hikmah
well,
means wisdom.
yeah,
FYI.
yeah. So he basically relied upon that, and he was able to make Muhammad's role supreme, and thus he was able to circumvent the idea because previous Muslims thought this was shirk, and he said no, it's not, and thus the Sunnah actually ultimately has superseded the Quran. Go on, Adam.
No, no, please carry on. You're all
Okay,
good. Right on spot.
so Shafi was the founder of the science of usul al-fiqh, which basically rejected istihsan, which was reasoning, because he feared that using reasoning, right, you would start to create loophole. Well, you'd find loopholes and you'd find other ways to interpret things, and thus you'd make arbitrary decisions and you wouldn't follow the Sunnah. This was very important to him. Now the question is, now does he plagiarize the Talmud? Right?
Okay, let's go back one step. Now I want to
Sure,
speak because I want to finish
sure.
you that point. So now what we are saying is here, guys, listen, comprehend. Slide number 2. Remember what we said in slide number 2. You cannot think. You cannot think. You are on a different slide. I just said go one
Yeah, I'll
slide
go
back.
back. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you cannot think. So what Shafi did, he actually made it in a written form saying, stop thinking. Stop thinking. What is written, you have to follow it blindly because this is what Allah said in Quran. Hence, you have to follow it without reasoning, without thinking. And that's the reality. Now, when Mimi Hijab or Mufti Abu Lay comes up and says something XYZ, and it goes against the Quranic narrative or the Asulul Fiqh or the Sharia developed and given by the four school of thoughts, by the four Imam, Imam Hanbali, Imam Maliki, Imam Shafi, and Imam Abu Hanifa,
Hmm.
he is lying to the core of his bones because no matter which scholar he follows, that particular scholar takes the fiqh from one of these four school of thoughts. That these four school of thoughts are the major people whom you cannot denounce, otherwise you are not even a Muslim, because they are the ones who gave you the proper interpretation and
Mm.
coherent references from the Sunnah and the Ahadith. Please,
Right.
brother.
Yeah, just so that, look, every Muslim is what's known as mukallaf. They are subject to the will of Allah and they are subject to follow the moral and legal dictates of Allah. A Muslim who consciously accepts this, he he does what is called, he's following the doctrine called taqlid, a follower. There's multiple terms you can use to describe these things. So he then does taqlid. He then follows a scholar. He chooses a scholar. Now, I need to note that out of interest, Muslims always say, but yeah, the scholars don't agree. No, the scholars agree on quite a bit. There are things they do not disagree on, but these are not issues that affect the fundamentals of the religion. They do agree heavily, 75% at least, on the issues that are fundamental to the religion. And while they might not always be perfect disagreement, there is a majoritarian acceptance. So the majority of scholars agree on something, it's become accepted, and they will follow that. So in 75% of the issues, there is agreement. The 25% where there may be disagreement are things that do not affect the fundamentals of Islam. Whether you pray with your hands up here or whether you pray with your hands down here, that doesn't matter. That doesn't change the fundamentals of the religion. These are cosmetic. That's where they might disagree. Understand? Also, it needs to be noted that the very fascinating subject is um, the idea of difference within Islam between the four schools is called ikhtilaf. right? The major scholar who discussed and harmonized the differences is al-Shar'ani, and he wrote a book called the Mizan al-Kubra, the Great Balance, or the Great Scales. So that's a fascinating subject. So when Muslims say that scholars don't, they do agree. Okay, and the idea of how they differ, this is also very well documented, very detailed, and harmonized by a different scholar, as I said, called Al-Sharani. That's a really fascinating discussion for another day. So I'll move forward here. So let's look at, did Shafi plagiarize the Talmud? So his work lays the foundations of Islamic jurisprudence that evolves a century later. Eventually, they stop squabbling and they figure it out. So the legal doctrine, the fiqh, develops rapidly in the mid-10th century. Legal terms suddenly sprout. Suddenly, legal terms are everywhere. And where did they get this? Well, from Iraq. Scholars start appearing with titles, and usul al-fiqh becomes prominent as a science, and the literature starts to grow. And then Shafi now gave a new significance to the terms Sunnah, Ijma, and Qiyas. Suddenly, these were important sources of law because prior to that, they were utilizing Roman and Greek law. They were deriving law from Rome and Greece. And suddenly, now he says, no, the Sunnah of Muhammad is where you get your legal rulings. So let's have a quick look here. So looking at Shafi's innovations, we now start to find a very strong resemblance between the four roots of the law and their Talmudic counterparts as used by Jewish rabbis. So let's step forward again. Again, plagiarism is not something that is uncommon within Islam. Many of you have not heard of a pagan Greek called Plotinus, right? Now, Plotinus hated Christianity. Just a little aside here. Now, his writings were widely read and accepted within Augustine of Hippo's time in the 5th century, over 200 years before Muhammad started speaking. Now, Augustine countered many of his thoughts and ideas in the book called The City of God, on the city of God against the pagans, or De Civitate de Contra Paganos, right, in Latin. So, I just want to briefly have a look at how ideas were taken from out of ideas that pre-existed Islam, right? So Plotinus had a concept of God called the One, right? Let's have a look. Now, I don't entirely agree with this guy's discussion of the attributes of Allah, but anyway, look at the sovereignty. God is creator, the One is the creator, Allah is the creator. What is the nature of God? A simple, single being, right, with a complex nature. The One is a simple unity and is beyond understanding, beyond being. And of course, in Allah, He is a simple unity, right? The Tawhid with pure will. And of course, He's beyond being, He's beyond the world. We cannot understand Him, right? Can He be known? Can God be known? Yes, through reason and faith. Can the One be understood? Only through complete submission. Can Allah be understood? Well, no, but you have to submit to Him. What is man's nature? Man is free. Allah says you're a slave, and Plotinus said that God wants you to be a slave. What is the basis for obedience in Christianity? Love, mysticism, and fear. And what is interesting, if you read, remember I said the akhruf is about mysticism, magic? Well, that's where the Sufi come in, and they follow the mystic route, while fear is for the Sharia obedient, right? Man's
So
will.
once again,
Yeah,
dude, you
sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm an
Yep,
Easterner. For
yep.
me, the words and how you sound them matters a lot. And all the
Okay,
Muslimin who are from the East, that matters a lot. Guys, you are a slave of Allah. You are Abdullah. You are
yeah,
a slave of Allah. There is no love. There is no free will. There is no nothing. Allah, if you are following a Muslim as an Islamic person, sorry, excuse my French, if you are a Muslim and following Islam, you have to submit, like I have shown you previously from the Quran, that unless you serve, Quran chapter number 49, verse number 14, unless you submit, you are not following Islam. Number two,
yeah,
Islam is based on fear. Islam is based on fear. Quran alludes to many times. I have done a fear of Allah and the love of Allah live stream where I have shown you that Allah will take the chain and put it from one hole and dig it out from the other hole. Let me just put it this way over here, and roast you in the hellfire. And when you are in the kabur, means in the grave, an angel will come and hammer you on your head, and etc etc etc. Long story short, go watch that video. But once again, it's based on fear, not on love, not on love, not
yeah,
on love. Now when we talk about Christianity, God said He loved the world so much that He sent His only begotten. Now, the whole concept is flipped, and that's the reason. The the one concept has nothing to do with it. It is mysticism and fear and slavery. That's the reality. Please, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, so of course, no, notice in terms of man's will, Christianity says we have free will, but imposing one's will on another is the concept within the one of Plotinus is the one. Notice we looked at the word Deen, which is about imposing your will on others and subjugating them. And of course, within Islam, this is the case. And of course, there's predestination. There is no concept of free will. And of course, notice that we have to know God. We come to know God. We draw closer to Him. We achieve communion with God, right? Whereas in the one, you submit, and of course within Islam, you submit. So notice these parallels that have been taken. I want to mention on the basis for obedience, mysticism and fear. Few people know, but Islam is split into two. Okay, there are four levels within Islam. You have the ibara, the ishara, the lataif, and the haqqaiq. Without getting to your lay Muslim is on the ibara level, the literal level, the plain meaning, the basic level. Your ulama, your Yasir Qadis and so on, and Zakir Naiks are on what is called the next level. Okay, so you've got there on the ishara level, which is the subtle the level of subtlety and a subtle understanding, the allusions within the text, subtle meanings. The next level is reserved for the Sufi. Now, it's not understood. Al Azhar University is the major seminary within the Sunni Islamic world. It certainly teaches the four major schools of fiqh, the four schools of jurisprudence, which we've discussed. Few people realize that the current rector of Al Azhar is a Sufi. And prior to him, the rector was also a Sufi. And in fact, they represent the seven major schools of Sufism at Al Azhar. They teach them. Because, you see, God is Logos, Allah's will. The Quran is about the will of Allah. It is entirely the will of Allah. There's no understanding of the personality, the character of Allah. The Bible is a discussion of the character of God, who he is as a person, his attributes. Whereas, while attributes may be named within the Quran, God is not described. There's no way to know him. So, Islam is then split. So, the top two levels, the Lataif and the Haqqaiq, are reserved for the Sufis. This is the spiritual aspect of Islam because the Sharia is legal. It is not spiritual. It is legal. It is your obligation, your duty, your legal obligations. However, which is performative. It's what you do. It's all works. Whereas the spiritual understanding, shall we say, I wouldn't say the mystical understanding, the magical understanding of Allah, that is reserved for the top two levels for the Sufi, who are the prime spiritual masters of Islam, because they master the Sharia and then they move to the higher level, which is the spiritual understanding of Allah. And of course, Islam is split into two as well. So you've got the Hakika, which is reserved for the Sufi, which is the understanding of the nature of Allah and contemplating Him, and the Sharia, which is for the plebs, which is simply following the will of Allah, doing what you are told. I'll stop there, Adam.
No, you're absolutely right, brother. Let me add to this. So, guys, I have told you guys many times that there are two different type of alum, the knowledge. So there are alumul khasa, the knowledge for the specific few, and then there is a alumul
Yes.
ama for the knowledge for the normal people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what my brother Lloyd did, he gave you the explicit names of the type of scholars. This guy is a meat, man. This guy gives you meat. Learn, learn, learn. So he actually have derived it into four different possible areas which the ulama deen actually consider it to be true. So even the alumul khasa, the knowledge of the select few, is derived into three categories. So even when Mr. Qadi actually speaks something, when he speaks beyond his ability, the rest of the people says, "Hey, you stupid idiot." That's what they are saying it. I have multiple videos on that as well, as you can see in the past. Why? Because he is not at the level where he should speak according to the Muslim scholars. That's what Lloyd is saying. That is why Yasir Qadi is being denounced by these people, because he is giving part of Alumul Khasa to Alumul Am, to the normal people. He
Mm-hmm.
is giving the knowledge of the specific few to the normal people. So he is being penalized, persecuted by the Muslim scholars, because he is giving the true knowledge which is there to the normal people. So
Yeah.
imagine that. Please, brother.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll move on from here. So I'm going to briefly go through the proofs of Islam. So yeah, we can come back to this, but I thought this might be interesting to us. So Islam talks about the proofs of Islam, right? So you have the four roots, which are known as the proofs of Islam. So everyone says, so the proofs of Islam refer to the proofs that the mujtahids, the most qualified scholars, rely on when they deduce and they describe the rules of Islam. So these proofs are, according to them, the Quran, okay, scriptural revelation, the Sunnah, as we know, the Ijma, which is the consensus of the jurists. So the Ijma is the final understanding. This is the 75% of the rules of Islam that all the four schools agree upon, right? And this was derived by the four Imams. And finally, you had Ghazali, who basically topped everything off. And then you have Qiyas, juristic logical argument or comparative analogy, those. And of course, deducing a judgment for a case based on similarities to a case found explicitly in the religious texts. So that's your Qiyas. That's your comparative analogy. Right, now let's move forward. So, human reasoning in Islam. So, a basic overview. So, now these sources are supposed to be secondary, right? So, the Quran is supposed to be primary, but it is not, right? So, you have reasoning, right? And then you have the consensus. So, if a legal solution is neither available in Quran or Sunnah, Islam allows Muslims to find a solution which is agreed upon and accepted by the majority, not by the majority of people, by the majority of scholars, okay, by the ulama. So now ijma derives from jama, to unite, assemble the community or the ummah. Now in legal terms, it is a procedure through which a principle of law is formulated by unanimous opinion. This opinion is not unanimous. It is going to be majoritarian, right? The majority will win. Also defined as the unanimous agreement of Muslim jurists in a particular age on a particular question of law. That is what the ijma is. And in Sharia law, you must understand the Muslim community, the scholars, can never, ever be wrong.
Okay,
It is
hold
not,
on, brother, over here. I'm
yeah,
gonna change the topic. Arkins is your moderator. Okay,
yeah.
Arkins, the problem with Sal is he is a constant viewer of my channel. He comes in, I have asked him to come up multiple times. He comes in live and he shows a finger and a fist and put it on his camera, and he fist his camera and he shows the finger. He comes in with a derogatory names and does not speak other than showing the finger. So what I'm doing with the Sal, I'm doing
Hmm.
it right. The day he will get the guts to come up and speak and refute, I will not do that. So, Arkins, when I'm saying this to Sal, I know who I'm talking to and I know my audience, brother. So, trust me what I'm doing to this stupid, idiot, demonic son of a devil, because that's what Paul said to the person and said, you son of a devil, go blind for 3 months. And that's what happened. So, my brother in Christ, I love you, but don't be a loser. I know my audience. This guy is coming from my channel. He has no guts. He is more coward than us, than the 9 years old Aisha, whom Muhammad molested at the age of 53. So, brother, love me so that I could love you and we could all get the information out for the rest of the people.
Yeah.
Please, brother. Sorry.
Well, no, thank you. No, that's fine. So no, so this is what the consensus is. The consensus is critical, right? This is what is commonly believed by the scholars and therefore must be accepted by Muslims today. Now, ijtihad, it literally means effort. So in law, it is the use, not think jihad, ijtihad, jihad, effort, struggle, whatever. The use of individual reasoning or exerting yourself to form an opinion in a case or as to a rule of law. And it is achieved by applying analogy to the Quran and the traditions of the Prophet. The opposite of ijtihad, of reasoning, is called taqlid, which I mentioned before, is the unquestioning acceptance of the doctrines of established schools and authorities. So, in other words, you are to submit and accept without question. Now, I can go into the Sharia on this, I won't do so now, but understand this is the doctrine of Islam, that lay Muslims simply have to follow the doctrine of taqlid, accepting what they're told by the scholars. That's what they say. Have you consulted a scholar? Okay. Now,
Yes.
ijma. Now, in theory, the Quran and the Sunnah are preeminent, and Muslims will tell you that. However, ijma, in practice, it is the most important of the sources of legal knowledge. So the previous statements of the scholars, the previous rulings, is the most important understanding of everything within Islam. It is the unanimous agreement of the community on a regulation imposed by Allah. It is the unanimous doctrine and opinion of the recognized religious authorities. So in theory, it is the third, but in practice, it is the most important of the sources of the legal knowledge. And remember, there is no separation between the law and religious practice. Adam.
You are right on spot. We have already discussed it. Now we are working on that. But ijma, when it comes to ijma, right now, when we are talking about the 20th and the 21st century, you do not have an ijma on anything at all. Anything. So basically, when we talk about ijma, we have to go back at least 1,000 years. That's where you actually had ijmas. Right now, the Muslimin are divided so much thanks to people like Lloyd, Sam Shamon, Christian Prince, Rob Christian, um, and so many others. Let me just add so many others. We have put a hammer in Islam to show the holes which are already present, that they do not have an ijma on anything. They are fighting with each other right now because of these things that we are exposing. So ijma is there. Without ijma, Islam is nothing. Islam is nothing without ijma. And hence we are going back to originals, the basic early schools of thoughts and the scholars who are called mujtahideens. Please, brother.
Let's go on a little bit. Okay, right, yeah. So continuing with this. So there was a time there are some problems with the hadith. So let's have a look here. So for instance, in the past, Islam used to relate traditions from the Jews, and there was no restriction. According to the hadith, there was no restriction on utilizing the hadith of the Jews. Right? So Islam used to quote Jewish traditions. Okay, so the earliest Islamic sources didn't have also chains of transmission. They were devoid of change of narration. So the earliest change of narration were very basic. And what's interesting is that if you go to the very earliest sources, there are no change of narration. But you go to the later ones, their stories are very, very detailed. So how do you go from no information to more information later on? Because you would think that you'd be deriving from previous sources. Those sources don't exist. In fact, they were just added. They grew increasingly detailed over time. Change of narration are not necessarily proof of authenticity. Right? For some critics, they prove the contrary. Any competent hadith scholar can forge a solid isnad, and that is what many, many of them did. So Goldziher says on the development of hadith, he demonstrated that a vast number of hadith accepted even in the most rigorously critical Muslim connections were outright forgeries from the late 8th and 9th centuries. And as a consequence, the meticulous isnads, the change of transmitters which supported them, were totally fictitious. On this point, I need to
What? Repeat that, please, brother. I
The
love that
meticulous
sentence.
isnads,
Please.
the chains of transmitters, were utterly fictitious. So think of these numbers.
Oh,
We know of, let's say, Sahih Bukhari. Okay, Bukhari apparently looked at 650,000 hadith. He eventually selected roughly.
brother. Let me add. Let me
Yep,
add.
go on.
Sorry, let me add because
Sure.
one of the Muslim over here will start shouting at you on that. Okay, brothers, between 400,000 to 650,000. Please, brother.
Okay.
Because when you don't actually talk about the narrative, how they actually have the narrative, they will forget everything what you said, and they will just take one of your point and they will abuse you. So I want to be
Yeah.
absolutely right on that, these
Yeah,
things.
within this document, they speak about Bukhari and they talk about how many hadith he edited. But so basically, if you count up the number of hadith that were known and edited, so in other words, okay, so you had Malik, Hanbal,
Yes.
Shafi, Hanafi. These guys went through the hadith and they decided which were authentic, which were suitable to be put into the Kitab al-Sita and other books of hadith. So just between the four of them, you've got 2 million hadith.
Amen.
2 million. Bukhari chose only 7,500. That means he
Out of
rejected
out of out of approximately
two.
400,000 to 600,000. So he
Some
1%.
sources say 600 from Medina and Al Azhar. They say 650,000.
Yeah.
Hanbal, Malik or Hanbal, actually Malik went through 700 or more thousand, apparently in theory. So you're looking at millions of hadith, right? And somehow only about 20,000 are reliable. That means that the reliability rate is less than 2%.
Uh, that's a simple mathematics, brother. So yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, exactly. This is crazy. So understand, imagine that you had to reject 98% of the stories about your prophet.
By the way, you know why? You know why also. Let me tell you why. Because those hadiths are so bad that after 300 years, these people, or 400 years, these
Yeah.
people are saying, no, we cannot attribute this to Muhammad. We cannot attribute this to Muhammad. Why can't they attribute to this Muhammad when it is written by the
Right.
most authentic people? For example, Imam Ahmad. For example, Ibn Masud. For example, Ibn Abbas. So these basic narrations are there and proclaimed Sahih before these four school scholars. Then after that, they were like, no, no,
Right.
no, 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 they are daif.
Yeah. So of course now early scholars felt no obligation to provide any documentation of hadith, any evidence for arguing their case, and the Sunnah was not recorded and written during Muhammad's lifetime. We're looking at 200-300 years later. So even according to Islamic scholar Khalid Abu al-Fadl, all this changed with Shafi, and then he created this agreement that hadith should be used to authenticate the Sunnah, even though these hadith were themselves not authentic. Okay? And over the course of the second century, legal works began to use these prophetic hadith, even though they were known to be completely false. So hadith were now systematically collected and documented, but generations had passed since the time that these things had happened, with again no documentation to support their authenticity. So many reports attributed to the Prophet are apocryphal or of dubious historical authenticity, and thus developed the main one of the most complex disciplines in Islamic jurisprudence, and that is the how do we distinguish between authentic and inauthentic hadith? So this forced the scholars to come up with another science. Your thoughts, Adam?
No, 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 you're absolutely right. For example, day before yesterday, I did a stream called Homosexuality of Muhammad, where
Right.
according to him, angels came and did a group ding dong with him for all night long.
Good grief.
And this is called Sahih before these four school of thoughts. And I've shown that all the evidences before these four school of thoughts, they are even Imam Humble actually quoted that hadith, and I gave the link and reference. These angels who were naked came down and did the group ding dong with him all night long.
Crazy.
Now, why can't you find that in the English translation? I've given you all the Arabic translations of that. I've given you four links in the
Yeah.
Shia and the Sunnis. Now, why don't you have it here? You know why? Because they want to hide. Please, brother.
Yeah. So, of course, now you've got so the authoritativeness of the Sunnah was strengthened when scholars, in response to wholesale fabrication of hadiths, right? They created the ilm al hadith, the science of determining the reliability of individual traditions. This is why it was developed because most of the hadith was simply 98% plus of the hadith were just false, right? So the Sunnah was also used in tafsir, the Quranic exegesis, and of course, the exegesis really stems from like the 1500s. This is like 800 years after the death of Muhammad or something like that. So you're looking at very late sources, and they criticize the Bible, but their own sources are extremely late, right? So
And
now,
fabricated.
yes, and the Sunnah was used in fiqh and legal doctrine as the basis of legal rulings, not discussed in the Quran. So if they were fabricating these rulings, they were creating rulings that suited their needs at the time. So Shafi was able to solve a critical issue for them, right? So the Sunnah became the body of traditional, social, and legal and custom and practice, etc., of the Islamic community. Now, some people had looked to Medina, right, for an example, which is where Muhammad died and lived. Others followed the behavior of the companions, which is also where you get the four different schools of thought, because each of the companions had a different understanding of how to apply Islam, how to follow Islam. That's why you have four different schools, right? So also you had provincial legal schools. You had Iraq, Syria, you had the Hijaz in Arabia in the 8th century. All of them were trying to create and reconcile the Sunnah and make a legal system out of it. And so Shafi was the one who came along, sorted this out to them. So you had varying sources, and the problem is now because the empire was spread in each of these cities and all these places, they were starting to create different practices. They were all doing Islam differently, and this was leading to conflicts and contradictions. So now this had to be reconciled. They had to find the ijma, the common understanding, because they could not have. Remember, if the scholars would never be wrong, if the scholars would never disagree, would never agree on an error, then they all had to be identifiably the same, and thus they had to be an ijma. Understand? So this is why it was critical that he came up with a way to reconcile this and then follow a single set of rules they could all agree upon. And the rest was simply called cultural differences based on geography. Your
Awesome.
thought?
So ijma, yes, ijma. So ijma, without ijma, I have said that multiple times in the past. Without ijma, you have no Islam. Quran, even though that it claims on multiple locations that it is a mufassal book, means a comprehensive book.
That's right.
Even Quran alludes to the fact multiple times that the ayahs of the Quran are mufassal, which I can say chapter number 17, verse number 80. No, wrong. That's not here. In chapter number 41, verse number 3, and chapter number 16, verse number 89, it says
41
even
3,
in
you
the
said.
Quranic 1689, chapter number 16, verse number 89, it says that even the ayahs of the Quran, Kitabul Fuzzilat, a scripture whosoever the verses are explained in detail in the Quran and Arabian liqawmil ya'malun. So a book whose verses have been detailed, and this is an Arabic Quran for the people who knows. So even though that Quran said that multiple times, not just one time, let me give you, so remember that Quran chapter number 6 verse number 114, Quran chapter number 10 verse number 37, Quran chapter number 12 verse number
Hmm.
111, Quran chapter number 25 verse number 2, Quran chapter number 41 verse number 3, and Quran chapter number 16 verse number 89. All of these verses of the Quran are
Yeah.
saying that we have given you a Quran which explains everything in detail. Even, even the verses of the Quran, which is says in chapter number 41, verse number 3, which is on your screen, in your screen, which
I'll show it
Lloyd
again. I'll
removed.
put it back. So,
41 3. Even the verses of the Quran is explaining everything in detail.
but it doesn't do that.
Verses, but it doesn't. Yes, thank you, brother. Like, dude, you say these things with hammer, man.
Yeah.
So
So,
yes,
so,
it does not.
so,
It does not. And that is why you will see in Quran it says offer prayers 5 times a day. Okay, perfect. But how many times have been described in Quran for prayers?
3.
It is only 3 times.
Yeah.
So the Quran describes 5 prayers but only gives 3 times. Why? Now, number two, so you have to offer 5 prayers, but Fajr, you have to do 2 rakas. Zohar, you have to do 4 rakas. Asr, you have to do 4 rakas. Maghrib, you have to do 3 rakas. Isha, you have to do 4 rakas and 3 witr. Now,
Yeah.
where is that in Quran? Nowhere,
Somewhere.
nowhere.
Which is,
I'm not even talking about how to offer prayer. Means whether you should have your hand closed or hands open, or whether you should do Rafa Yadain or you should not do Rafa Yadain. Rafa Yadain means that every change of your stance, whether you should pick up your hands and touch your ears or not, that is Rafa Yadain. Forget even the basic things or the more detailed things.
well,
Even how many rakas are in each prayer, that is not described in Quran.
now you'll
So
notice, yeah, on that point, for instance, this is the index to the reliance of the traveler. The prayer is in section F, page 101. So if you are looking in the Quran for that, you're not going to find it. Ask any Muslim, show me how you do the prayer in the mosque. Where's that in the Quran? How is that described? So let's actually go to that. So let's go find page. Oh, I need to go further. So the prayer. So here are the rulings. Now notice this is just the index, right, of how to do the prayer. So, and I should wind up here. So who
this
must
is just
pray?
the index
The
of four
the
pages
prayer
long.
times, making up missed prayers, knowing when to pray. This is not in the Quran. You're not going to find any of this. The purity. The purity is a condition of prayer. Purity of place, excusable and inexcusable amounts of filth, blood or pus. This is the description of the prayer. When to face, placing a barrier, description of the. This is just the index. This is not even getting into the prayers. How many rulings are here? Do you understand how many hundreds of rulings are present here before we even get to the actual description of what you're supposed to do? This is just the index to how to pray in Islam.
So basically, what you are and what I am saying to the people, that if you follow just the Quran and you will call yourself as Quranist, you can't even offer prayer. You
Yes.
can't even offer prayer. You can't even do wudu. Wudu means the cleansing before you offer prayer. That is required, mandatory. So when somebody says, I am Quran only, he is lying to his bones, because they cannot even offer prayer without going to the Sunnah of Muhammad. Full stop. Full stop. Now,
Yeah.
so what we are showing you here is all of these things and we do not have enough time, because if we start working on these things, you have to work on
Yeah,
Lloyd's channel, guys. He has so much information in his channel. He, because like this cannot be encapsulated in one session. I'm going to do multiple
yeah.
sessions with it,
I'll. So
with him.
maybe you know what, it is getting long, so maybe we should call it tonight and then repeat another
Yes.
time. But I want to mention, for instance, if we look here, you'll notice that within the Sharia it says a Muslim who holds the prayer to be obligatory, but through lack of concern neglects to perform it until its proper time is over, has not committed unbelief, which is fantastic. Rather, he's executed, washed, prayed over, and buried in the cemetery.
Good one. That's a good one.
This
I like
is
this. Guys, take the screenshot of this. Use it.
Yeah, so this is the ruling. This is what ISIS did. ISIS killed people who didn't make it to the prayer. They literally killed them. So this is what happens. Understand? So ISIS followed this to the letter. So guys, yeah, we should call it now. I should note just on an aside on this, but within Islam you have two levels of obligation or two levels of commitment. You have azma and rukhsa. Both are accepted as valid before Allah. Okay, azima is when you strictly do the thing as it should be done. In other words, these are your extremists. They are following the Sharia to the letter. Okay. However, those who are not doing that, who are not the extremists, called the moderates, they're following the doctrine of rukhsa, which is alleviation, facilitation. In other words, they're allowed to not fulfill every letter of the law. They're allowed to soften how they approach it. They're even allowed to neglect certain things because not everyone is as strong, not everyone is as intelligent or weak or committed. So understand. So yeah, but however, all of them, both of them are real Muslims. They're both getting reward from Allah for following the doctrine, but there are two levels. Azima and Rukhsa. Those who are strong follow Azima. Those who can must do that. Those who cannot, the majority, but also it is Sunnah that not everyone must go out and fight in Jihad, for instance. That is an obligation upon the few, those who follow Azima. So those non-Muslims, but however, their obligation could switch from Azima to Rukhsa at any time if there's a legal need. This is an obligation upon them too. So guys, I should give it, well, for me it's getting late and I need to, maybe we can do a part
No,
two on
that's
this.
true. It's over 2 hours. So guys, if you have any question, now is the time to send. Number one. Number two, the next stream I will try to do it on on StreamYard, so that I could get you guys in for questioning, because I saw a couple of people who want to come and question. So this will not be the end of it, by guys. I will get Lloyd even more over here, and I see that I do not have the normal watchers in my live stream because of the quality of the
I do
stream.
apologize for that again. I'm so
No,
sorry. I
no,
feel
no
very
worries.
bad about that.
No worries. We I'll try to do it on through the live stream. The next session, probably on Tuesday. We will announce it like at least a couple of hours beforehand. We will work on that on Tuesday. An hour before this time, maybe at 8 p.m. Central European time and around 2 p.m. Eastern time. I will going to do that. Lloyd is in a place where he cannot do it late. I know a lot of my viewers are from the Eastern time zone or Central time zone. It will be their work time. I wish I could do it at 5 p.m. Eastern so that I could capture maximum of my viewers. But somehow, because of Lloyd, we have to work on that. But in the next session, which is on Tuesday, I would ask all the Muslim people who are on my channel to get this, to read this, to learn this, and come up with the arguments. And I will try to stream it using StreamYard so that I could get you in and you could have a discussion with us. I
Sure.
welcome
By all means, yeah.
everyone to for the discussion. Everyone, as you know, I send my live stream link to everyone. Sal, you can come up. I will give you another chance to come up. But once again, you showing us a middle finger or you taking a derogatory name does not prove Islam. If you have an argument, come and give it to us. If you
Yeah.
do not have an argument, I can't do much about it.
Yeah.
So
Just
did
on
you?
Akhruf, just to Akhruf, you got here the science of letters. So just so everyone can see that what I mentioned earlier, onomatomancy, magical practice, occult properties of the letters of the alphabet based on alchemy, just so that people can see this stuff. This is actually you have fire letters, air letters, water letters, and earth letters. Understand? There's this all this weirdness going on in Islam that they don't want to talk about. That's why they don't want to talk about ahruf and kiraat.
Yes, Ahruf and Karat, guys, I have done multiple live streams. Most of the Muslims does not even know between the Ahruf and the Kira. Kira and Ahruf is a basic issue in Quran and
You know.
the Sunnah. And Lloyd has done a brilliant job showing us these secondary sources to explain that. But if I would explain it in a very simple way, for example, hey brother, let me
Yeah,
show you that.
yeah. We should.
So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. We
for
should.
a very short one, let me
Sure,
just
sure.
show my screen. Hold on, brother. Give me a sec.
Go for it.
Let me show my screen.
Your screen has been captured now and shown now.
Okay. So this you could see a paintbrush.
Yep.
Okay. Let me see. All right, guys. So basically, I'm going to show you a very basic problem in Ahruf and Kira. So they say this is Ahruf. So now let me show you. I'm moving this aside. So they say, so forget this part.
Sorry
This
about
is
that.
standard. This is everywhere. So can you show my screen, right?
Uh, Sorry, it's showing again. Yep. Go
Okay.
on.
So this is how it is written without the dots to begin with. Okay, without the dots to begin with. They say it's everything has to do with ahruf and kiras. Now, this if we write a dot over here, if we write a dot over here, it will become Abdur Rahman, which means slave of Allah. Slave. Slave, slave of Allah. Now, with the dot down below, with the dot down below, that will become Abba. That is a letter of Arabic which is equivalent to B. Okay, Abba. Now, I'm assuming the Varsh version of Quran, what it does is it removes that from the down and it puts a dot on the top and it becomes a noon in Arabic or an N in English, the sound equivalent. And this becomes a with. So So the angels or whatever is with the Rahman. Rahman is one of the names of Allah because you'll say, Hu Allahu ar Rahman ar Rahim al Malikul Qudus Salam. These are 99 names of Allah. I can recite it anywhere. I remember it by heart. So the Quran, which is preserved in the Lahul Mahfuz, is with the Allah using an N or of a slave of Allah. What does the Quran says in Lohil Mahfuz? Are you with the Allah or you are slave of the Allah? So basically the N and the B, these are ahruf, the differences of ahruf. And I have shown that in the past as well, where the diacritical marking changes the meaning of the word from singular to plural or from past to present. So all of these differences are qira'as. So Quran has been modified and remodified and remodified so many times, and I have done debates on that where the scholars of Islam or the teachers of Islam or the students of the scholars of Islam actually came up with me and they claimed that they are the student of Islam in the university doing graduation and they could not run away from the subject except to run around in a circle like a dog catching his tail. So Abdur Rahman with the Rahman or slave of Rahman, in the Rahman or Abdur Rahman. That's a big issue for a normal person. It is just an issue of a dot, whether it is on the bottom or it is on the top. But for the person who knows Arabic, he knows that the ba, which is B, changed to N, which is noon. It's a huge issue, guys. It's not something small.
Yeah.
FYI.
And with the original Ahruf or with the original Kirat or whatever, there were like 7 different variants. Then there were 15, and then maybe it was 20. maybe it was 30. We're not quite sure. So yeah, I mean the numbers they make up, they're just. But guys, yeah, maybe we should call it tonight and then continue. It went a tad longer than I anticipated, but I hope that was useful. That you learned something. And again, I apologize for the technical issues. I have no idea why. I've done this double streaming before. It's worked perfectly, and I'm not sure what happened tonight.
No worries, brother. You are L for love, L for loser. So I love you, and I will keep on loving you. You are doing a brilliant job. And but next stream, I would like these Muslimin to come up.
Sure.
We will actually have 1 hour of a discussion and 1 hour to get these Muslimins in to ask us
Yeah.
right now. Anyone who has a question, now is the time to send us before we close our stream, guys.
Yeah, well, I see nothing at the moment, and let's go back to chat. So yeah, the chat's been hectically busy. Good grief, both of us for the chat. It's been very, very busy.
Mm, I have far less viewers than I usually have.
I know.
Like I have viewers, almost 100 plus viewers usually when I go live.
That's my fault. I
Right
mean,
now, I
the
have far less viewers, but that's not even a problem. The problem is that Muslimin who has a question, now is the time to ask the question. Secondly, all these Muslimins who will watch our session later, please, now is the time, because when I go live at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., that is early morning for Sri Lanka, for Pakistan, for India. That's early morning. So they do join in. Right now, it is like 3 a.m. in eastern southeastern part of the world. So I do not have the usual crowd with me, and that is okay. But someday Lloyd has to wake up in his night to do a live stream. At the same time, CP was live as well right now. So I have a lot of people whom CP actually took from me, because when CP is live, we can't do much about it. Like he has like 1,000 plus
yeah,
crowd over there. So that's another problem. But once
yeah.
again, somehow my live stream today was in conflict with CP and everyone. So I do not have my usual crowd.
Okay,
So we gotta do it if possible. We gotta do it like 3 hours later. You have to be on Red Bull the next day when you do it 3 hours later
good
with me.
grief. Yeah,
So you have to have like a couple of Red Bulls the next day to do that. So
yeah,
guys, any question? Now is the time before we close the stream.
yeah. There was a question about jihad. Look, the thing is, you've got to go into specifics, and you need more than one Sharia manual typically to answer a question. If it's about jihad, I need to go into, and jihad's like a 2 hour discussion on its own, right? To go through the actual full legal basis and all the definitions and all the rules. But jihad is very bluntly, it is warfare to impose Islam upon non-Muslims. And yeah, it's as simple as that. I'd have to show you the Hedaya, volume 2, link below, as well look up jihad within the Reliance. But the Hedaya is far more detailed.
Right. But like who's asked what is this actual question basically? Can you
I
repeat the
just wonder, what
question?
do you say to them? I show them, I just give them the definitions. I quote the
Okay.
definitions, I give them the books and say, guys, so please show me the nice Sharia definition. Please give me, and they cannot, they will not. Don't forget, it is illegal. It is actually treason for a Muslim to share the Sharia with you, right? He's not allowed to do something that would embarrass Islam or would reveal the secrets or the weaknesses of Islam. It is also illegal for them to share any Islamic books with you. And also, then, besides, they cannot share it with you. They cannot share this with you if you are not, your intention is not to convert, but your intention is to actually harm or undermine Islam. So it's actually illegal for them. There's multiple different reasons, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Absolutely correct, brother. Absolutely correct. Because if we go in deep into jihad, we can do a live stream on that. Not right now. We have to finish
Yeah,
that.
I've done
So the
plenty.
next 2 or 3 streams will be on this only. FYI.
No, appreciate it. Thank you. So yeah, we should call it a night. It is late for me. I've got an early start tomorrow. But guys, thank you. We went. This was yeah. This was quite intense. Very different for me. But thank you. I really am grateful, Adam, that you gave me the opportunity to meet with you and to discuss these issues with you. You know, and
Brother,
for
more
the
than welcome.
opportunity.
You are bringing some stuff which is hard for me to present, and you have so much knowledge. Guys, if you want to do a PhD in Islam, you have to follow Lloyd's channel. And I will say that, by the way, tonight at 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. California Standard Time, I will be going live with Sam Shimon. And I will tell you and everyone in Sam Shimon
Yeah.
channel about what we did in here with Lloyd. And there will be a live stream coming up very soon where Sam will be present here as well. We will see all these three scriptures together.
I
We
just
will
want to
see.
mention something, if I may. This Al Farouk just came up and he says that we are Islamophobe dummies, right? Let me just
Oh,
actually bring.
Islamophobe.
Hold on a second.
I love
Okay.
that.
No, listen, wait, before we go, I just want to show something. This is just one example, one of many. Now, this is the standard orthodox position of Islam on Christianity, right? Christianity is Deen al Batil. We are the false religions, the void religions, the worthless religions. In fact, al Batil is one of the names of Satan. So we are the religions of Satan. But this is from Ibn Qayyim, from a very popular book which discusses and teaches Muslims what Christianity is. So listen closely. The prayer of the Christians ridicules the God they worship. They chose a way of prayer during which the most devoted and ascetic amongst them would consider it no great matter if he happens to have passed urine dripping on his thighs and legs. This is while you're in church taking a prayer. Then you would take the direction of the east, make the sign of the cross over your face, and worship the crucified deity. Then you'd open a conversation with whomever happens to be sitting beside you. This is in church, right? And probably the chat would be about some mundane matters like the price of wine or pork, who won in gambling, what dish you prepared at home, and then he would urinate in his seat if he can, right? We're
That's
Islamophobes.
Islam.
This
That's
is what
Islam.
Islam teaches about Christians and Christianity. So there's a
That's
lot more
Christopher.
than
By the
this to be
way,
found.
in Al Azhar University, in the third year, they teach you a book, and I have exposed that in my live stream as well. They expose a book which actually calls that the Bible is should be used for istinja. The Bible should be used for istinja.
To wipe your ass.
Istinja is that when you piss or
Oh yeah.
you do the pooping, you clean with something. That is
Yeah.
what they call it to be, that the Bible should be used for istanja. And you are telling us to be Islamophobe? Your
No.
religion, Islam, is is Jewiphobe and Christophobe.
Phobe.
So instead of telling us this, come up and refute these things what we are showing, that no, these are not correct because of this, this, and this. If you have this information, come up. If you do
This is
not have this information,
this is
do
Ibn
not.
Qayyim, Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Qayyim. Okay, this is one of the top. We may not be in Sheikh al-Islam, but this is one of the very top scholars. This is one of the top experts in Christianity and Islam. This is where they get their arguments from. This is 800 years old. This is what they believe, that Christians take a piss in their clothes, in their pants, on the seat, in church. This is what they were teaching, and this has become doctrine in Islam. Understand? So, yeah, I don't know. This is disgusting. And there's a lot more of this. This is just one little passage in one little book. So, moving on. So, anyway, we should call it a night, guys. This is what Islam teaches about you. Okay, just so
So,
you are
guys,
aware of
get
this.
ready for Tuesday. Tuesday, we are going live again. And in Tuesday, we are going to allow you Muslims to come up, and I challenge every Muslim in the entire world. Imagine you guys claim that you are almost 2 billion Muslimin. I challenge each and every Muslim in the entire world. Bring your Fifi, bring your Mimi, bring your whatever. Let's see if you or your scholar can negate with evidence what we are showing over here, or what we will going to show in the Tuesday's live telecast. I am telling you, it does not matter. Bring me any person in the world. Let's
Yeah.
see what you have to show.
So understand, Islam teaches very bluntly that it has abrogated all other religions, and that we are remnant cults. Okay, I'm not going to show that here, but basically, Islam has abrogated all other religions and we are remnant cults. Understand, this is the formal standing of the Sharia on what Christianity is, a remnant cult, which we're supposed to get behind Muhammad and pray behind him as he fought, or whatever the case might be. But yeah, this is what they teach. So anyway, guys, I will call it a night here. It's been fantastic. Thank you for the time. Thank you for the interest. And sorry about the technical glitch again. I feel very bad about that. But yeah, Adam, yeah, thank you very
No,
much for,
no worries,
and I look
brother.
forward to seeing you guys on Tuesday to do some more of this
I
stuff.
love you. I love you. I love you. I love your work. God bless you. Subscribe to Lloyd's channel, guys. I love his work. But once again, he's L for loser as well because he made my stream go very bad.
Yeah, I feel bad
But
about that,
once
man.
again, no matter how much time he will have to say sorry, once again, he's
I've
L
done
for
it
loser.
before when it worked great, and I'm not sure what happened, man. I have no idea what happened there. That
But
okay, but
thank you.
guys,
I will also upload a stream from Lloyd's channel, which is a better
yeah,
stream, so that you could go through
I
this.
am recording a
And
high quality stream. I'll give you the copies. You can upload a high quality copy in
so,
1080p.
God bless
Cheers,
you
guys.
guys. God bless you.
Okay, we
And
go. God
for all
bless,
the
guys.
Muslims, get your stuff ready. On Tuesday, we almost the same time, 1 or 2 hour up and above. We will publicize it on Monday. Get ready. Get your material. Learn from your best of your
Yeah,
scholars, and I will share the StreamYard link with you guys so that you guys could come up and refute
you
us,
know
challenge us up.
This Al Fakhruk Al Sayyid guy. He's saying that we're that we're a religion waiting to die, etc. And because everyone is aware that Christianity is a dummy religion. Look, while we may or may not pee in our pants in church, at least we don't drink the urine. Okay, buddy? So have a good night,
Muhammad
guys.
allowed drinking. Muhammad did not just allow drinking of camel urine, but his own people drank Muhammad's urine. So
Yeah,
if
let's
you
not
want
get, dude. We need to
that,
stop. We need to stop. I
no, no,
know.
no, no. I go to the neck, buddy. If you are working
Yeah.
with me, I go to the neck. I will prove that people drink Muhammad's
No, I'm happy to
urine.
talk about that. I'm happy to bring that up. I've
That's
got slides on
yeah,
that. I've got plenty of
dude.
documentation on that.
I have. So
So
you have the evidence, obviously. So now I'm not showing the evidence right now because this idiot who is a Mohammedan has to tell me, no, we are wrong. And I'm going to prove it. And this idiot is a urine drinker. Okay, number two, Muhammad allowed muta and he allowed it. Now, why do you as a Sunni says it's abrogated? I've done a live stream on muta as well. So guys, learn and understand. Islam is nothing. Islam is nothing except for a 7th century fantasy. By the way, you
yeah,
guys have
guys.
nothing.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Please,
But anyway,
brother.
we'll continue this. Poor guy. So anyway, we shall see you guys next time. Thank you very much for being here, everyone. I hope this was entertaining and educational. All resources in the description box. Contact me if you need anything, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday. Have a good
All right,
night.
brother. God
Thanks,
bless
brother.
you all. Take care.
Take care. Bye.